The little wife has 5 babies at once, and young Master Lu enjoys himself every night. Pregnant. Yi Shengsheng was stunned when she saw the checkup sheet. Looking at the uncle who came to her house to take responsibility, Yi Shengsheng complained, "You liar, why did you lie to me that you would have no descendants?" "Master Lu of the Imperial Capital, good boy, I didn't lie to you." Yi Shengsheng's eyes turned red. "I don't want to give birth, I want to finish my studies." Master Lu panicked. "Good boy, baby, don't cry." Chapter 1, Is she pregnant? "Congratulations, you're pregnant." Huh. Yi Shengsheng sat on a bench in the hospital, holding the test result in her hand, and the doctor's words kept echoing in her mind. She wasn't happy at all, she was completely lost. Her hand slowly rested on her abdomen. Yi Shengsheng thought back to over a month ago. More than a month ago, Yi Shengsheng came to the capital to attend university. That night, it was a birthday party for one of her dorm mates. However, on that very night, her mother sold her to a 50-year-old man. She was sent to the man's bed. At that moment, she only felt an unbearable heat all over her body. She tried desperately to stay awake. "Little beauty, I'm coming." Yi Shengsheng bit her tongue hard, the pain helping her stay a bit more alert. She struggled with all her might, and then her hand brushed the ashtray on the nightstand, which she threw at the man's head. "Arr!" The man cried out in pain. Seizing the opportunity, Yi Shengsheng rushed out of the room. But before she could run far, she collided with someone. She looked up and saw a handsome man's face. "So handsome. Help me." The old man was closing in on her, and she was terrified. The handsome man looked down at the frightened girl who had collided into him, his face flushed with an unusual shade of red. It seemed she had been set up. He bent down and picked her up, carrying her toward room 888. Looking at her innocent and unaware face, she kept twisting in pain, and yet, his body couldn't help but react. Lu Shiyang gently touched her face. "Are you of age?" Yi Shengsheng seemed to hear someone speaking to her. She tugged at her clothes and responded softly, I am of age." Lu Shiyang no longer held back, acting on instinct and desire. As Lu Shiyang got closer, Yi Shengsheng felt a little cooler. So cool. She felt like she was just a boat floating aimlessly on the ocean, drifting with the waves. The next morning, Yi Shengsheng woke up, recalling what had happened the previous night. Her body felt as if it had been run over by a car, it didn't feel like her own anymore. Her first instinct was to leave immediately. But as soon as her feet touched the ground, "Arr!" The man on the bed woke up. Lu Shiyang heard the noise and woke up, seeing the girl sitting on the floor. He quickly got up, put on a bathrobe, and walked over to pick her up and place her back on the bed. "Last night. I'm sorry." Lu Shiyang didn't expect her first reaction to be an apology. Did you take precautions last night?" Yi Shengsheng's voice became softer. In response, the man gave a low, deep reply, "I can't have children." Looking at her trembling body and her terrified expression, his body reacted again despite his best efforts. He turned and went into the bathroom. Yi Shengsheng quickly got up, dressed, and stumbled out of the room. She knew she wasn't his biological daughter. She had overheard her parents talking about it when she was in middle school. She was adopted, so she was often beaten, scolded, and denied food when she was little. But she never imagined her mother would sell her. Looking back now, it was her own fault for believing that man's words. He said he couldn't have children, so she didn't take the pill. Her college life was busy. Besides attending classes, she worked part-time to pay for living expenses and tuition. If she had known she would end up pregnant with that man's child, she would have taken the birth control pill, no matter what. But now what should she do? She sat on the hospital bench, lost and helpless. The doctor had said the surgery would cost thousands. Where could she find that kind of money? She tucked the test results into her bag and numbly walked out of the hospital. At that moment, a car stopped in front of the hospital, and a man stepped out, looking in her direction. This was the girl Mr. Lu had asked him to investigate, the one who had taken his virginity. After the investigation that day, Mr. Lu didn't say much. What was she doing at the hospital? Was she sick? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. He quickly called the hospital director and had Yi Shengsheng's medical records pulled. A few minutes later, Lin Jiyuan found out why Yi Shengsheng had come to the hospital. When he saw that she was pregnant, Lin Jiyuan immediately straightened up. Are you sure she's really pregnant? The hospital director smiled nervously. Yes, Mr. Lin. We did an ultrasound. There's no mistake. It's twins. Lin Jiyuan. He glanced at the date. Over a month ago, that was the night Mr. Liu had taken her virginity. He slapped his leg and laughed out loud. What a coincidence. Could these two kids be Mr. Liu's? He had asked the hotel manager, and the manager had mentioned seeing blood stains on the bed when it was cleaned up. He wasn't fully convinced, so he did a little more digging and found out that the girl was still a virgin, so these two babies were most likely Mr. Liu's. Lin Jiyuan hurriedly left the hospital, speeding toward Liu's corporation. He arrived at Liu's corporation as quickly as possible and rushed to the CEO's office. The secretary, aware of his relationship with Liu Xiang, let him in without hesitation. Lin Jiyuan didn't even knock, he burst into the office, interrupting a meeting. Without a word, he kicked everyone out and sat down across from Liu Xiang. Liu Xiang looked up, his expression cold, his eyes as if saying, "You better have a good reason." But Lin Jiyuan wasn't intimidated. He raised an eyebrow. Mr. Liu, do you remember the girl you took virginity from? Liu Xiang certainly remembered her. She was his first and only woman. He was interested in her, but not much more. Seeing Liu Xiang's reaction, Lin Jiyuan knew he definitely remembered her and couldn't help but feel pleased. Guess where I ran into her today? Liu Xiang tossed his pen aside, glaring at him. Lin Jiyuan smiled brightly. I saw her at the hospital. I did some checks, and guess what? Liu Xiang coldly said, spit it out. Lin Jiyuan shuddered, awkwardly touching his nose. She's pregnant. Liu Xiang didn't flinch. Because Lin Jiyuan wasn't one to joke around. The idea that he couldn't have children was impossible. The Liu family had been struggling with heirs for generations, and his line had been through 9 generations. It was always a challenge. So, one night of passion couldn't have resulted in this. Lin Jiyuan, seeing no reaction, felt anxious. He placed the ultrasound report in front of Liu Xiang. I'm not kidding. Take a look at this report. This little girl is impressive. She's carrying twins. Liu Xiang glanced at the report, seeing the date and the details. There was a crack in his cold expression. How do you know it's mine? He couldn't believe it. Lin Jiyuan. You asked me to investigate her. I checked again after leaving the hospital. Besides that night, she's been at school, attending classes. The timeline matches up. If it's not yours, then whose could it be? Mr. Liu, looks like the throne of the Liu family finally has someone to inherit it. Chapter 2, Making a Decision. Indeed, there was an heir to be secured, and across the entire capital, who would dare to go against the Liu family? Liu Xiang's gaze grew serious, his thin lips parted. Are you sure? Lin Jiyuan rolled his eyes. Liu sir, you know what happened that night better than anyone. That young girl is pure and innocent. I can guarantee these 2 children are definitely yours. If you don't believe me, I can immediately arrange for a paternity test. Liu Xiang stared at the ultrasound report for a while, before finally speaking, I understand. He then called his assistant, Zhu Quan, to have him escort Lin Jiyuan out. Lin Jiyuan left the Liu Corporation in a sour mood, but as soon as he got into his car, he immediately called Liu Xiang's mother. How could he keep such big news to himself? Of course, he had to share it with old Madame Liu. Liu Xiang sat in his office for a few minutes before calling Zhu Quan again. Look into someone. Moments later, detailed information on Yi Shengsheng was in front of him. She came from a poor family, with an indifferent father and a neglectful mother, and had a brother who was a leech. She even had to work her way through university. That night, it turned out that her parents had sold her too. As Liu Xiang read more of the information, his eyes grew colder. He didn't know what he was thinking. The Liu family's child, finally obtained, shouldn't be left out in the world. 2 children, no less. If the family found out, they would be overjoyed. Meanwhile, Yi Shengsheng sat in her dorm room. It was June, and even without moving, the heat was palpable. But she felt ice cold, her body drenched in cold sweat. With no classes in the afternoon, and after over a month without a visit from any relatives, she finally went to the hospital for a checkup. The results were a bolt from the blue. The dorm was empty, no one was around. Yes, she was isolated. They looked down on her for being poor, never spoke to her or played with her. It didn't feel good, but she had to swallow her grievances. She didn't have time to think about it. Her priority was studying and making money, trying to escape the current swamp of her life. But just when she was trying her best, fate played a cruel joke on her. She was pregnant. Her emotions, suppressed for so long, exploded. She buried her head in her blanket, crying quietly. She cried, trembling, trying to hold back her sobs. She had learned to stifle her cries because at home, hearing her cry only meant more beatings and scolding. Her mind was a mess. What should she do? Why did that man deceive her? But then, she thought it wasn't all his fault. She had trusted him too easily. She should have taken the pill. But now, it was too late to regret. There was no time. She thought about finding that man, not to make him take responsibility, but to get him to pay for the procedure. But aside from his face, she knew nothing about him. How could she find him? The abortion would cost around 3,000, her living expenses for half a year. It was almost as if they were asking for her life. But if she didn't do the surgery, how could she, a student, carry the baby, raise it, and still manage to go to school? Would she raise the child alone? Shengsheng cried herself to sleep in her dorm. At this moment, she had no energy to think about part-time jobs. Night fell. Shengsheng was woken by the laughter and voices of her dorm mates. She opened her swollen eyes and glanced at her phone. She had slept all the way until 8 p.m. Her stomach was empty. She got up, got out of bed, and silently went to the balcony to wash up. After washing, she grabbed her phone and walked out. Just then, she heard her roommate, Shikasin's sarcastic voice, Shengsheng's striking it rich. Why didn't she go get a part-time job? Shikasin's family ran a small business, and she had some assets. Her attitude was arrogant, and the other two girls in the dorm followed her like lackeys. She had a deep dislike for Shengsheng. As soon as her words fell, the other two joined in, saying unpleasant things. Shengsheng ignored them, not even looking back as she left the dorm. Once she left, Shikasin started again. She still wants to escape the mountain and change her fate. What a joke. Another girl immediately flattered her. Exactly, she's better off using her youth and looks now while she's still fresh. She can fetch a good price. With that, Shikasin beamed with joy. Shengsheng had grown numb to this over the past month. She had already heard it all before. But it still hurt. Sometimes she wondered, was her birth truly a mistake? Her family didn't like her because she wasn't their biological child, and her dorm mates hated her because she was poor. But she had done nothing wrong. At the cafeteria, she didn't dare to buy anything expensive. She just bought a steamed bun and a bowl of soup. She had to be frugal with her money. Her parents didn't send her any, and she had to work to pay for her tuition. If she didn't save, she wouldn't have enough. After filling her stomach, she wandered around the campus. She needed to calm down and think about how to solve the most urgent problem. Under the dim night lights, her shadow stretched long, and she seemed to be the only one left on the playground. After aimlessly walking for an hour, Shengsheng made up her mind. She had thought it through and knew what path to take from here on out. Tomorrow, she would go for the surgery. It would be better to end it now rather than let it spiral out of control. But she looked down at her flat stomach, feeling the life inside her, connected by blood. After tomorrow, she would have to say goodbye to this little one. She couldn't help but gently touch her abdomen. Her nose tingled, and she quickly looked up at the sky, not daring to let her tears fall. I'm sorry. If it weren't for the circumstances, I wouldn't give you up. Baby, I'm sorry. Shengsheng sniffled, held back her tears, and collected herself before heading back to the dorm. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, after Lin Jiyuan's notification, Lu Xiang's mother had learned that Lu Xiang had 2 children and was so excited that she almost stepped on the gas to rush to the university to find her. She kept confirming with Lin Jiyuan, asking if the girl was really pregnant, if she was pure, and if Lu Xiang was the only man. After receiving confirmation, she breathed a sigh of relief and then felt elated. The Lu family had an heir. Lu Xiang's mother immediately called him back to the Lu family. That is our Lu family's hard-earned bloodline. What are you going to do about it? Chapter 3, Reunited. Lu Xiang sat up straight, his expression solemn. I will take care of her. Lu Mu immediately asked, when are you planning to get married? Mom. Lu Xiang simply called her name, no need to say more. Lu Mu understood what he meant. Lu Fu patted her back, calming her agitated emotions. Calm down. We still don't know much about her. Don't worry, the Lu family bloodline will not be lost. Only then did Lu Mu remember yes, they didn't know much about the girl. She didn't care about her background, but she hoped her character would be good. I was too excited. Son, you go take care of her tomorrow. The Lu family bloodline is difficult to come by, we cannot afford any accidents. It was widely acknowledged that the Lu family's heirs were hard to come by, as children were born late in life, and there was only one child, whether a son or a daughter. Her son was 30 this year and had never shown much interest in women. She thought perhaps he was not interested in women but in men. Thankfully, it wasn't he as she had feared. Her son was lucky he had a child at 30. Finally, the Lu family had an heir. All right. Lu Xiang remained calm on the surface, but inside, he felt a sense of excitement. He could hardly believe he was going to be a father. Lu Mu couldn't stay calm, pulling her husband over to pick out baby supplies on her phone. She was clearly very excited about this matter. The next day, Saturday. Shengsheng woke up at 5 o'clock, quietly sneaking out before her roommates woke up. She had asked for leave from her part-time job, saying she wasn't feeling well. The boss was very understanding, asking her to come back once she was better. She had a steamed bun for breakfast, drank some water, and then headed to the hospital. At the entrance of the hospital, Shengsheng hesitated. The hospital, a place that should offer hope, now felt cold and terrifying. She took a deep breath to calm herself, then steeled her resolve and went in to register, finding the doctor she had seen yesterday. Before the surgery, she had to undergo some necessary checks to make sure everything was fine. Shengsheng's figure appeared so helpless, with no one by her side. As she ran back and forth for the checkups, the hospital director had already heard about her case and the upcoming surgery. The director remembered that yesterday, Lin Xiao had come to inspect the hospital and had requested the young woman's case files. He left in a hurry without even conducting any work. The director found this odd. His intuition told him that the young woman must be important to Lin Xiao, perhaps carrying his child. Unexpectedly, today the girl came back, this time to have an abortion. The director immediately called Lin Xiao, but his call went unanswered. In a panic, he asked the staff to slow down her examination. Finally, after much effort, Lin Xiao answered the phone. You better have a good reason for calling. Lin Jiyuan's tone was full of frustration. The director's heart was in his throat. Lin Xiao, the girl you asked about is here at the hospital. Lin Jiyuan quickly became alert. What is she here for? The director quickly replied, she is here for an abortion. What? Lin Jiyuan jumped out of bed. How far along is she? Has the surgery started yet? The director said, not yet. She is still undergoing checks. I've told them to slow down the process, but it can't take too long. Please hurry here. Lin Jiyuan rushed to change clothes. Hold her steady. If anything happens to the child, none of you will leave here alive. After hanging up the phone, the director slumped in his chair, relieved he had called in time. If the surgery had been performed, he might have lost his life. Lin Jiyuan's urgency made it clear that the child must be his. The director stood up immediately, determined to personally oversee the situation. Lin Jiyuan called Lu Xiang right away. Lu Yi, the girl is at the hospital for the surgery. Hurry up and meet me here. Once the phone connected, he quickly explained the situation. Got it. Lu Xiang said just 3 words before hanging up. Shengsheng ran back and forth for her exams, finally finishing them. She went to see the doctor, who confirmed that she was eligible for the surgery. However, the morning surgeries were fully booked, and she would have to wait until the afternoon. The doctor asked her to sit quietly and wait. Shengsheng didn't suspect anything. She quietly sat in the hospital, waiting, but instead of the surgery, she was met by 2 men. One of them was the man from that night. Shengsheng raised her head to look at him. He was tall, and she sat in the chair, gazing up at him. She would never forget his face. If it weren't for him saying he would never have heirs, she wouldn't have ended up in this situation. No matter why he was here, she only had one thought in her mind: he had to pay for the surgery and the checkups. It was his doing, so he had to pay. Shengsheng stood up and looked him in the eye. His powerful presence made her nervous. Do you remember me? Lu Xiang looked at her, nodding slightly, his gaze deepening. She seemed to have lost even more weight. Noticing this, Lu Xiang became somewhat frustrated and tried to calm himself. Yi Shengsheng gritted her teeth and shamefully spoke, "Uncle, I'm pregnant. But don't worry. I'm getting the surgery this afternoon. The surgery fee, could you pay for it? 3,000 yuan, which should be small change for him considering his expensive clothing. He must be a wealthy man." The more she spoke, the quieter her voice became, her head bowing lower. She felt nervous under his intense gaze, unable to raise her head. She thought to herself, what if he refuses to pay? What if he says this has nothing to do with him? Lu Xiang's gaze turned to her, and his mind recalled the scene from that night when he had left marks on her body. His tone softened considerably. "Let us go. We'll start with the checkups." He took her small hand, leading her to the examination room. Yi Shengsheng reluctantly followed him through a series of tests. She didn't know what he was planning or why they had to skip the queue. He remained expressionless, barely responding when others spoke to him. The other man who accompanied them was constantly smiling. Lin Jiyuan rolled his eyes, feeling helpless. Lu Xiang's cold expression made him think the girl was scared of him. After the tests were done, they waited in a VIP room for the results. Yi Shengsheng's hand was finally free. Lin Jiyuan smiled. "Hello, sister-in-law. I'm Lin Jiyuan, Lu Yi's childhood friend. Please take care of me in the future." "Sister-in-law?" His words shocked Yi Shengsheng so much that she almost jumped out of her seat. She stared at him in disbelief. I'm not your sister-in-law. What are you guys planning? The surgery fee is your responsibility." Finally, she managed to say what had been on her mind all along. Chapter 4, Live at Your Place. Lin Jiyuan noticed that the young girl seemed a little frightened. He quickly explained, "It's not yet, but it will be soon. Sis-in-law, don't be scared, we mean no harm, just need to do a paternity test. But please don't misunderstand, we just want to be cautious." His words made Yi Shengsheng angry, so much so that she looked like a pufferfish. "You think I'm trying to scam you out of surgery fees?" Lin Jiyuan realized she misunderstood and quickly clarified, "Sis-in-law, that's not what we meant. This is Lord Lu Xiang. If the test shows that the child is Lord Lu's, we'll take responsibility." Yi Shengsheng glared at the man, who had remained silent and just sat there. She looked back at Lin Jiyuan. "If the child is really his, you must pay for the surgery." She didn't dare speak so directly to Lu Xiang, who had a cold expression and an intimidating aura. However, she felt bolder when addressing the smiling Lin Jiyuan. Lin Jiyuan wasn't sure how to explain, so he said, "Sis-in-law, what I meant is, if the child is really Lord Lu's, he will take care of both you and the child. He won't have the child aborted." Yi Shengsheng was confused. She glanced at Lin Jiyuan and then at Lu Xiang. Coincidentally, Lu Xiang looked up at her just then. Their eyes met. Yi Shengsheng immediately lowered her head. After a moment, she clenched her fists, gathering courage to look up at Lu Xiang. "I don't want to keep the baby." "Leave," Lu Xiang said, looking at Lin Jiyuan. Yi Shengsheng thought he was talking to her and was about to get up. "Sis-in-law, you two can talk. I'll step out." Lin Jiyuan turned and left. Lu Xiang softened his voice. "Why don't you want to keep them?" Yi Shengsheng felt a little dizzy. "I still have to finish school. I want to complete my education. I have my own life, and you have yours." Lu Xiang sighed, "I'll take care of you. Please, have the baby. It's not you who's pregnant. You never considered how I feel. I wanted to finish my studies. You lied to me, saying you'd never have children, so I didn't take birth control." She wanted to finish her education, enter society, work hard, and build a better life for herself. She never wanted to return to her old home. But being pregnant? How could she still go to school? What would people say about her? Lu Xian's tone grew colder. "Think it over for a few days before making your decision, okay?" They both fell silent, and Yi Shengsheng grew more upset, her head down as tears started to fall. When Lu Xiang saw her tears, his heart tightened. "Don't cry. You can still study after having the baby. I didn't lie to you. The Lu family has struggled to continue their bloodline since my ancestors' time. Now, you're carrying my child. It's the luckiest thing." The future of the Lu family rests on them. You're the mother of 2 children, and I'll take care of everything for you, including your education. Yi Shengsheng remained silent, still crying, but her mind was occupied with his words. She wanted money, of course. She dreamed of not having to worry about finances. But she didn't want to become someone who always relied on others. She looked at her flat stomach, her emotions complicated. These 2 children were innocent. Their arrival was an accident, but now she, as their mother, was considering abandoning them. If she could, she didn't want to hurt them. After all, they carried her blood. Wait, he said too. She was carrying 2. Yi Shengsheng finally reacted, lifting her head to look at Lu Xiang. Twins. Didn't you know? It's on the ultrasound report. Yi Shengsheng grabbed the ultrasound report and looked at it. It was really twins. Yesterday, when she found out she was pregnant, her mind was a mess. She hadn't heard the doctor's words properly and hadn't paid attention to the report. She had already felt a little reluctant, so how could she let go of 2? These 2 were her blood relatives, her only family in the world. If this man truly meant what he said, maybe she could keep the children. Yi Shengsheng's heart was in turmoil as she looked up at Lu Xiang. Is everything you said true? Lu Xiang looked at her pure face, his expression softening. As long as you keep the children, I will take responsibility for you. Yi Shengsheng smiled bitterly. I'll think about it, but if I do keep them, I have conditions. Say it. If I keep the twins, I want to be able to see them whenever I want. Shengsheng, I will take responsibility for you. You will always be the mother of the children. Please think it through, okay? Okay. Yi Shengsheng quietly agreed. In the lounge, there was silence. No one spoke, quietly waiting for the results. After a while, Lin Jiyuan entered with the hospital director, respectfully greeting, Lord Lu, young Master Lin, the results are in. Lin Jiyuan excitedly rushed forward, grabbed the result, and looked at the page. Instantly, he jumped up in excitement and sat down next to Lu Xiang. Lord Lu, congratulations. You're getting twins. It was only then that the director realized he almost made a fool of himself. He was relieved he hadn't congratulated young Master Lin earlier, or else he might not have made it out alive. Sweating, the director also congratulated, Congratulations, Lord Lu. However, Lu Xiang's expression mixed joy and complexity. He looked at Lin Jiyuan. Leave. Lin Jiyuan, understanding that there was more to discuss with Yi Shengsheng, smiled and left, giving them some space. He had to report the good news to the old madam. Yi Shengsheng stood up, ready to leave. As soon as she moved, Lu Xiang grabbed her hand. Shengsheng, sit. Yi Shengsheng. She understood that he still had something to say. But seeing the complicated expression on the man's face, she dared not speak. Yi Shengsheng lowered her head, nervously fiddling with her hands, trying to calm herself. Lu Xiang spoke first. He looked at her small figure and movements. In his eyes, Yi Shengsheng seemed so fragile, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. But remembering what she must have gone through at home, he knew she was a poor, lonely girl. No one had treated her kindly. From now on, he would. Lu Xiang took a sip of coffee. Shengsheng, before you decide, why don't you move into my house? I'll take care of you. Huh? Yi Shengsheng looked up in shock, then frowned. Her expression was a little adorable. Live at your place. Chapter 5. She is your young lady. Yi Sheng asked weakly, but I still have to go to school. Lu Xiang, I will be responsible for picking you up. Yi Shengsheng was stunned for a moment. What he meant was, he would pick her up personally. Can she say no? Yi Shengsheng said in a negotiating tone, it's more convenient for me to live in school. Lu Xiang said in an unnegotiable manner, this matter is not negotiable. No matter what the final result is, it concerns your safety. Humph. What a domineering old man. Yi Shengsheng complained in his heart. It is so troublesome to pick him up and drop him off every day. I don't know how much the gas money will be. If a child really comes, he will have to raise 2 children. I don't know if he can raise them. After all, raising children is very expensive, especially since there are 2 of them. Can I stay at your house at night? I'll be staying at the school dormitory at noon, and it would be too troublesome to run back and forth if I have classes in the afternoon. Good. That's all. Yi Shengsheng moved into Lu Shiyan's house that day. After arriving, Yi Shengsheng found that it was only 10 minutes away from the school, which was very close. Because she hadn't decided whether to keep the two children, she only took two simple sets of clothes and brought them to Lu Shiyan's house. There was no one in the dormitory today. They all went out to play, and no one saw Yi Shengsheng being picked up by someone. On their way back to Lu Shiyan's house, Yi Shengsheng racked his brains to think of how to tell the counselor that he was staying outside at night. She hesitated for a long time and still didn't know what to say. As a result, she received an application from her counselor approving her to live off campus. Yi Shengsheng cautiously glanced at the man driving next to him, his face full of disbelief. He just made a phone call and the matter was resolved. She didn't expect that the man could solve the problem with just one phone call. She couldn't help but doubt the man's identity. That Lin Jiyuan always called him Master Lu, and even the people in the hospital were respectful when they saw him. Is he some big shot? Yi Shengsheng thought about it, took out his mobile phone, opened the browser and searched for Lu Xian's name. Lin Jiyuan said his name was Lu Xian, and a lot of searches turned up his name. She randomly clicked on one, and when she saw it, she was so scared that she wanted to cry. The eldest son of the Lu family, the prince of the Imperial Capital, the president of the Lu family, the famous Master Lu. It's obvious that these people are not simple. Yi Shengsheng swallowed, turned off her phone, and looked at the man next to her, with his perfectly beautiful profile. She thought she wouldn't be caught peeking. In fact, Lu Xiang had already discovered it, and all her little movements were noticed by Lu Xiang. Like a frightened kitten, the low-key luxury car drove into the villa area and stopped in front of the villa gate. Yi Shengsheng heard from her classmates that this was a place she could not afford even if she worked for several lifetimes. It seemed that none of her classmates lived here. I heard that anyone who wants to buy this place must not only have money but also power. How rich and powerful must Lu Xiang be to be able to live here? Yi Shengsheng was wondering in his heart. This villa is too big. Before Yi Shengsheng came to her senses, Lu Xiang helped her unbuckle her seat belt. She just got off the car. As soon as he entered the door, a servant came forward immediately. Yi Shengsheng nervously changed his shoes and walked in slowly. The further I walked, the more shocked I became. She followed Lu Xiang carefully, fearing that she would accidentally step on a tile that she shouldn't step on. Lu Xiang sat down on the sofa and looked at the nervous little woman. He took her hand and said, "Shengsheng, sit here." Yi Shengsheng sat down gently on the sofa. She looked around. Everything here looked expensive. She couldn't help but feel inferior, thinking that her identity was not suitable for this place. Lu Xiang noticed her emotions and knew that she was nervous, so he grabbed her and picked her up like a princess, and sat her down on the sofa. Before Yi Shengsheng could react, he had already sat down, and Lu Xiang was sitting next to him with a calm look on his face. She looked at the man beside her, opened her mouth, but in the end said nothing. Just then, the housekeeper Li Mar came over with a group of servants and they served all the dishes. Afterwards, Aunt Li said with a smile, "The young master is back." "Who is this young lady?" "She is your young mistress," Lu Xiang said with a raised lip corner. Mother Li nodded and glanced at everyone. Everyone welcomed him in unison. "Hello, young master." Yi Shengsheng was startled and waved his hands quickly. "No, I'm not." Lu Xiang looked at her. "Shengsheng, you are." He looked at everyone again. "From now on, her words will be my words." "Yes." After the servants recognized the person, Aunt Li let them go about their own business. Aunt Li walked up and asked, "Master, are we going to eat now?" "Yes." Lu Xiang said, "Go and ask 2 nutritionists to come and formulate a meal for the young lady to eat during pregnancy." Mother Li looked at Yi Shengsheng in disbelief, then said happily, "Yes. I'll go find her right away. The young mistress is too thin. She needs to eat more." The rest of her words were addressed to Yi Shengsheng. Yi Shengsheng has not yet adapted to this sudden change and is a little overwhelmed. The lunch was very sumptuous and Yi Shengsheng was very full. She had never eaten such delicious food before. After lunch, Yi Shengsheng didn't know what she should do. Someone was clearing the table and washing the dishes, and it seemed like there was nothing she could do to help. If this happened at her home, she would be the one doing all the housework. If she didn't do anything, she would be beaten and subjected to unbearable verbal abuse. She doesn't deserve to live at home. Lu Xiang called Aunt Li over and said, "Take madam to rest." "Okay." Aunt Li said gently, "Young madam, please follow me." Lu Shiyang touched her head and said softly, "Have a good sleep, and you will get used to it slowly." She responded softly, followed Li Mar upstairs and came to a room. Aunt Li opened the door and walked in. "Young madam, you will live here from now on. If you need anything new, just let me know and I'll ask someone to do it." Yi Xingxing took a look at the room and his first impression was that it was so big. She was very satisfied and felt like she was dreaming. Can she really live here? Yi Xingxing smiled politely at Li Mar. "It's nice here, I like it very much, thank you Li Mar." Aunt Li smiled and said, "If the madam wants to thank someone, she should go thank the young master." This is what the young master ordered. Yi Xingxing lowered his head and nodded. "Madam, please take a rest first. I won't disturb you. If you need anything, just call me or the servants." "Good." After Li Mar left the room, Yi Xingxing looked at every corner of the room carefully. After a while, she fell asleep. While Lu Xian was handling official business, he heard that Li Mar was here to invite him, saying that his mother had arrived. Chapter 6: His Home. As soon as Mother Lu heard that Lu Xiang had taken the person in to take care of him, she came over immediately and also learned the results of the identification. She rushed over as soon as she got the news, thinking that she could see him, but when she arrived, the servant said that Yi Xingxing was sleeping. So she hurried to the study to find Lu Xiang. "Son, when will that girl wake up?" Lu Xiang was speechless. "I don't know. She's been tired all morning. Let her have a good sleep." There was concern in her tone. Mother Lu pouted, not looking like a woman in her 60s at all. "You've been together for the whole morning, what do you think of that girl?" Lu Xiang took out the investigation materials and said, "He's a good person, but a little timid." Mother Lu picked up the information and started reading it. The more she read, the more distressed she felt. Especially when she saw that her parents beat her and didn't give her food, she became even more angry. She was so angry that she slammed the table. People like this are not worthy of being parents. Not only did they not pay for her education, they even sold her off. This is a miserable child. Since she is pregnant with our child, it means that she and the Lu family are destined to be together. You should treat her well, understand? New. The more Mother Lu thought about it, the more she felt sorry for Yi Xingxing. "I'll go see her." Lu Xiang also stood up and said, "I'll go too." The mother and son walked out of the study together and, led by Li's mother, came to the room. As soon as they opened the door, they were hit by a stuffy heat. They were all stunned. Why is it so hot in the room? Mother Lu hurried over to check the air conditioner, it was not on. Then she went to see Yi Xingxing who was sleeping. He was wearing simple clothes and his forehead was covered with sweat. "How can I sleep well when it's so hot without air conditioning?" Mother Li quickly turned on the air conditioner. Lu Xiang walked to the bed with a sullen face, took out a tissue, and gently wiped the sweat off Yi Xingxing with a bit of heartache. He asked Mother Li to stay and look after the room until the temperature dropped and then adjusted it to a moderate temperature before he and Mother Lu left the room. Mother Lu thought about the thin girl who might fall down with a gust of wind. How can this child stand this weather? Lu Xiang thought about it. She is afraid of spending money. How much money can this be worth? It must be so uncomfortable in such a hot day. Then, Mother Lu thought about the difficult environment Yi Xingxing grew up in and could understand why she did this. It seems that this is really a good child. If it were a bad one, when you come here, you will feel at ease and enjoy it. Mother Lu sighed, "I'll wait for her here. When she wakes up, I'll take her to buy some clothes and daily necessities. When she comes to our house, she won't have to live the same life as before." After a while, Mother Li came downstairs. In the living room, Mother Lu and Lu Xiang saw Mother Li coming and asked quickly, "How is it?" Li Mar smiled and said, "It's okay, the temperature has dropped, and the young mistress is sleeping soundly." The heat in the room dissipated, the big bed was soft, and Yi Xingxing slept much more soundly. "I slept until about 4 in the afternoon and felt so comfortable. Not hot at all. Quilt." She remembered that she didn't cover herself when she slept. "The house is cool." Yi Xingxing seemed to have thought of something. "I suddenly looked up at the air conditioner, and sure enough, it was running, 26 degrees. But she clearly didn't turn on the air conditioner before going to bed. She slept so comfortably, it turned out that the air conditioner was on. She slept for so long, how long has the air conditioner been on?" How much does it cost? Yi Shengsheng didn't have time to think about it, he quickly got up and turned off the air conditioner. It shouldn't have cost much electricity, right? After washing up, Yi Shengsheng went downstairs. As soon as I arrived in the living room downstairs, I saw two people sitting on the sofa. This old lady looks a bit like Lu Xiang, and her temperament is similar to Lu Xiang. Yi Shengsheng thought about it and thought that since they looked alike, she should be Lu Xiang's mother. She was born into a poor family and just moved in while pregnant. The old lady would not like her, so it would be better for them not to meet. Thinking of this, Yi Shengsheng turned around and wanted to go upstairs. But when she went downstairs to the living room, the two people in the living room noticed her. Mother Lu was still waiting for her to come over and say hello, she was looking forward to it. But she didn't expect that Yi Shengsheng would turn around and leave. Seeing the inferiority complex emanating from her, Mother Lu certainly knew what she was thinking. She was simply afraid that she didn't like her. Mother Lu already felt sorry for her, thinking that she was a poor child, and now, she felt even more pity for her. Shengsheng. She gently called out to the person who was about to leave. Yi Shengsheng stopped, his whole body stiff and very nervous. At this moment, she had her back to them and no one could see her helplessness. She told herself not to be nervous, it was okay. She took a deep breath, then turned around and forced a smile that was uglier than crying. Hello, is there anything I can help you with? The aura of Lu Xiang and the old lady was too strong, and Yi Shengsheng's voice was quieter than a mosquito. She was very scared and felt very inferior. She didn't deserve to be here at all. Mother Lu couldn't suppress her heartache, her face was gentle, she was afraid to scare the person in front of her. Her tone was very slow. Shengsheng, come and sit here. Yi Shengsheng felt as if his feet were welded to the ground and he couldn't lift them at all. She told herself in her heart that it was okay, the old lady looked very kind and would not make things difficult for her. Thinking of this, she suppressed the fear in her heart and walked forward step by step. Lu Xiang frowned and said nothing, just looking at her. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Shengsheng walked slowly to Mother Lu, lowered her head and respectfully called out, "Old madam." She kept herself very low. Mother Lu reached out her hand, pulled her over distressedly, sat her down, held her hand and said gently, "Shengsheng, don't be afraid. We have no ill intentions and we are not bad people." Yi Shengsheng looked up in surprise, then in an instant, panic appeared in his eyes and he quickly lowered his head. "Shengsheng, don't be afraid." Yi Shengsheng let Mother Lu hold his hand, not daring to move, and whispered, "I dare not." Mother Lu held her hand and said, "I just want to talk to you." Yi Shengsheng was so nervous that she didn't know what to say, so she just hummed softly. Mother Lu smiled and said, "You guessed that I'm Shiyang's mother, right?" Yi Shengsheng nodded. "Yeah. I know that the baby in your belly is our Shiyang's. Shiyang will take good care of you. You don't have to worry and live here peacefully. It was difficult for our Lu family to have children. I was almost 40 before I had a child like Shiyang. From now on, I will have to work hard on you." Yi Sheng didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Was she going to say that she hadn't decided whether to keep the children? But Lu Xiang seemed unhappy. She was afraid that she would accidentally make him angry. What should she do? Chapter 7, From Head to Toe. She and Lu Xiang had no feelings for each other. That night, she was careless and fell into her mother's trap. Now that she is pregnant, he brought himself here to live so that the child can be safe. He said he would take himself to and from school because of the child. For the sake of the child, he has treated himself very well, letting her live in his home and hiring a nutritionist. The old lady just said that it would be difficult to have children, and Lin Jiyuan also said the same thing this morning, so it seems that Lu Xiang did not lie to her when he said that night that he would have no descendants. But in this case, the two children in her belly become really important to their family. It is possible that they are the only two children in his life. And it is because of the preciousness of these two children that she can live in such a good environment and enjoy preferential treatment. Lu Xiang said that he would be responsible. That being said, he should be very good to the two children. But if that happens, I will have to give birth to these two children. She lowered her head and said nothing. Mother Lu looked at her pretending to be strong and sighed in her heart, "Are you afraid of me? Shengsheng, you can rest assured that you are always in front of the two children in times of crisis." Mother Lu said this because she wanted her to know that she was not just a tool for childbearing, and that she should be put first in everything. This was the first time Yi Shengsheng felt warmth since she was a child, and tears flowed uncontrollably. She really wanted to say that she had not yet decided whether to keep the child, but she couldn't say it because it was her own blood after all. After a long while, she finally said yes. She discovered that the old lady was different from what she had thought. She was a very easygoing person, much easier to get along with than Lu Xiang. Speaking of Lu Xiang, she didn't even dare to look at him. She always felt that he was very unhappy at the moment, frowning and not speaking. Seeing that she had relaxed, Mother Lu was very happy. Shengsheng, come on, I'll take you to buy some things. Shengsheng quickly shook her head. Madam, no need, I don't need anything, there is everything here, no need to buy anything. Lu Xiang prepared everything, all of which were the best, and she lacked nothing. She has nothing to be dissatisfied with living here. She was even afraid of what she would do in the future if she got used to such a life. Mother Lu disagreed. I'll take you clothes shopping. As she said that, she stood up and was about to pull Shengsheng out. Shengsheng said quickly, Madam, there's no need to spend money. I'm fine the way I am now. Mother Lu looked at the old clothes on her body that were washed so much that they looked white, and her heart ached. What's wrong with this child? She just heard Yang say that the clothes she brought were all like this and she didn't know how long she had worn them. That's it, and you're still talking about it. The two of them were pulling each other like this. Lu Xiang slowly stood up, walked forward, and looked at Shengsheng. Shengsheng, let's go out for a walk. After saying that, he took Shengsheng's hand and walked out. Mother Lu watched her son's marriage blossom, took the girl's hand, and followed them with visibly happy eyes. In the car, Mother Lu noticed that she was nervous and kept chatting with her, trying to ease her tension and make her relax. After arriving at the mall, Shengsheng looked at the tall building and didn't even have the courage to walk in. She had heard from her classmates that in this kind of high-end shopping mall, the items inside were priced at least a few hundred yuan, and some even ranged from hundreds of thousands. Shengsheng was reluctant to step into such a place. She felt uneasy. She doesn't fit in here. Mother Lu noticed that the people around her stopped walking and turned around to see her uneasiness and resistance. What's wrong with Shengsheng? She asked. It's okay. This is a shopping mall. Anyone can come in. Don't think about it. She knew that Shengsheng was inferior and lacked confidence, and she also knew that she was like that because of her upbringing and experiences since childhood. But lack of confidence and inferiority can be overcome. Take it slow and everything will get better. Shengsheng told herself that this was just a shopping mall and it was okay. She could come here again when she made money on her own in the future. I struggled internally. She smiled at Mother Lu. Madam, I'm fine. That's right. Mother Lu happily took her hand and walked inside. An hour later, they hadn't chosen a single piece of clothing. Mother Lu also understood what was going on. The child was reluctant to buy it. Lu Xiang also saw what she was thinking. He stood up and walked in front of Shengsheng, staring into her eyes and trying to soften his voice. Shengsheng, don't you have anything you like? Let me help you choose. Shengsheng was stunned. Taking a look at the clothes, any piece of clothing here costs tens of thousands of dollars, which is too expensive. She saw no need to buy these, she had clothes to wear. Although it can't compare with here. Next second. Shengsheng, I'll help you choose. A man's deep voice came to my ears. Shengsheng subconsciously looked at Lu Xiang, and their eyes met. Lu Xiang kept looking at her. She suspected that if she didn't make a choice, Lu Xiang would empty out the entire store. After thinking it over, Shengsheng compromised and said, I'll choose for myself. Well, take a look at which ones you like. Select them and they will deliver them to your home. Lu Xiang looked at the person in front of him, as if he was scared by himself, and spoke as gently as possible. Things went much more smoothly afterwards. Whenever Shengsheng saw clothes she liked, she would say she liked them, and Lu's mother finally breathed a sigh of relief. The manager also breathed a sigh of relief. After selecting several sets of clothes, Shengsheng said to Lu's mother, Madam, that's enough. I can't wear so many. Shengsheng secretly glanced at the man sitting on the sofa, and the man also noticed it and looked over. Mother Lu thought that there was still a long time to come, so she stopped forcing him. Okay, let's buy these today. Shengsheng breathed a sigh of relief. She thought they were going to check out, but unexpectedly, the manager took them to another area. Then, in 2 hours, Mother Lu and Lu Shichen took her shopping from head to toe. Shengsheng breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was over and he could go home. But what she didn't expect was that they took her upstairs again. Yi Shengsheng was shocked. What else did he want to buy? Madam, aren't we going home? Mother Lu smiled and said, don't worry, let's buy something else and go home to eat. As they stood in front of the electronics counter, Yi Shengsheng was about to cry, Madam, my phone is still usable. Change to one that can video chat, so that I can video chat with you when I miss you. Mother Lu said gently. Just when she was still thinking about how to reject the old lady's kindness. Then a man's voice was heard, take 2 of these. She subconsciously turned her head to look at Lu Xiang. He chose a white one and a black one. The designs of the phones are very nice and he really has good taste. 2. Chapter 8 to give her money. Shengsheng, mine needs to be changed too. We should use the same one. Lu Xiang knew what she was thinking. Yi Shengsheng wanted to say something, but when she saw Lu Xian's determined eyes, she dared not say anything. Shengsheng, just install the card in your cell phone. Lu Xiang tried to use a gentle tone, for fear of scaring her. Then, she asked someone to upgrade her package so that she wouldn't have to worry about running out of data. After leaving the mobile phone store, Lu Xiang took her little hand and went to buy a tablet and a laptop for her to use in studying. Mother Lu looked ahead and saw her son's actions with an anti-smile on her face. She couldn't help but sigh inwardly that her son had finally come to his senses. The moment he walked out of the mall, Yi Shengsheng finally breathed a sigh of relief. After getting in the car, Yi Shengsheng was immersed in his own thoughts. She thought she should thank the old lady for buying so many things for her, spending hundreds of thousands in one go. Thank you, old lady. It's been a waste today. Mother Lu looked at her with a distressed look on her face. Shengsheng, we are family, no need to thank you. If you need anything in the future, just tell Shiyang directly. Besides, it was Shiyang who paid for today. If you want to thank someone, then thank Shiyang. Deep down, she really wanted Shengsheng to be her son's daughter-in-law, and thought that bringing them together would be the best thing, as her son hadn't had a single person of the opposite sex around him in all these years. Now they have a child. Seeing how considerate my son was today, it seems there is hope. She could see that Shengsheng was a good child, many times better than those scheming ones. The Lu family doesn't need any marriage alliance. Encouraged by the old lady, Yi Shengsheng looked at the indifferent man next to him and whispered, thank you, Master Lu. When Mother Lu heard this, she narrowed her eyes in laughter. People outside call him Master Lu, and we call him Shiyang. Yi Shengsheng smiled at the old lady. The man hummed as a response. Mother Lu was furious when she saw her son's expression. As soon as they got home, Aunt Li saw that they were back and immediately asked someone to bring the food. Madam, Master, Madam, dinner is ready. Father Lu was sent out on some errands by Mother Lu, so he was unable to come and see the crowd. They sat at the dining table, and in front of Yi Shengsheng was the pregnancy meal that had been customized for her by the nutritionist she had hired. She is too thin. If she doesn't eat more nutritiously, she will suffer when the 2 babies in her belly grow bigger. Yi Shengsheng looked at the large nutritious meal in front of him and looked at Li Mar. Mother Li smiled and said, Madam, this is the nutritious meal prepared for you by the nutritionist. Your body needs to be supplemented with nutrients. Yi Shengsheng nodded and thanked him. Mother Lu sat next to Yi Shengsheng, and Lu Xiang sat opposite her. Shengsheng, you are too thin, eat more. Yi Shengsheng nodded, thank you, old lady. She ate the nutritious meal in front of her. It tasted good and she liked it very much. But the portion of the nutritious meal was a bit large, and she could not eat any more after eating only a small portion. She felt reluctant to see the servants take it away. Lu Xiang saw through it and said, Shengsheng, it's good that we are full, otherwise our stomachs won't be able to handle it. Yi Shengsheng thought about it and agreed. After finishing his meal, Lu Xiang took out a bank card and placed it in front of Yi Shengsheng. Shengsheng, take this. The password is your birthday. Yi Shengsheng looked at the bank card on the table with a confused look on his face. Why should I give her money? She had already spent a lot of Lu Xian's money today and couldn't spend his money anymore. Mother Lu sighed inwardly, picked up the card and put it in her hand. Shiyang gave it to you, take it, don't think too much, this is what he should give you. This is not a question of should or should not. Madam, I can't take this card. I'm fine here. I don't have anything to buy and it doesn't cost much. She quickly put the card back on the table. Mother Lu glanced at Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang looked at her with gentle eyes. Shengsheng, take it first, buy whatever you want, don't save. Yi Shengsheng thought for a moment and said, then I'll take it first. She just takes it, and at worst she won't use it. Mother Lu smiled and said, oh, that's right, Shengsheng. You should slowly adapt to the life here. Your life will get better and better in the future. Then, she looked at Lu Xiang. If anyone dares to treat you badly in the future, just tell me. Being bad to you is being bad to me. I will definitely protect you. Yi Shengsheng knew that the old lady was serious and she would do what she said. In the future, she will slowly work hard to create her own world and life. Thank you, she said sincerely. Mother Lu sat for a while and chatted with Yi Shengsheng before returning to the Lu family to allow the two of them to develop their relationship. As soon as Lu's mother left, Yi Shengsheng immediately returned to her room. Lu Xiang looked at the figure that was fleeing and felt a little annoyed. Was he that scary? Afterwards, he got up reluctantly and went to the study to deal with things. Yi Shengsheng was reading and doing homework in the room. Suddenly, she remembered the air conditioning incident in the afternoon and wanted to go to Li Mar to ask about the situation. She stood up, stretched her body, walked out of the room, and looked down carefully. Seeing that Lu Xiang was not there, she bravely walked downstairs. But when she got downstairs, she didn't see Li Mar, and she didn't know where she was. After asking people, I found out that Li Mar was in the garden. The servant sent someone to call him. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Yi Shengsheng thanked him and sat on the sofa waiting. After a moment, Aunt Li came in hurriedly from outside and said respectfully, young madam, are you looking for me? Yi Shengsheng was stunned for a moment. Don't worry, I'm fine. Li Mar smiled and said, okay, then I won't run next time. Madam, just let me know if you have anything to say. Yi Shengsheng stood up and said, Auntie Li, when I was sleeping in the afternoon, did someone come into my room? Young madam, please sit down first. Aunt Li helped her sit down. In the afternoon, the old lady, the young master and I went there. Yi Shengsheng didn't expect Lu Xiang and the old lady to go in. Then it was the old lady who turned on the air conditioner in my room, she asked quickly. After understanding what happened, Yi Shengsheng asked Li Mar to go and have a rest. She was sitting there in a daze. The old lady and Mr. Lu came in, but she didn't hear any movement. How could she be sleeping so soundly? Yi Shengsheng sighed and thought it would be better to turn on the air conditioner. She could only think that the place was so big, it would use more electricity, and it would cost more, but she only had a small part, so she should just open it. Just like that, Yi Shengsheng made up his mind. Yi Shengsheng returned to the room and turned on the air conditioner. After a while, the cold air from the air conditioner blew away the heat in her room. Now she lives here and picks him up from school at Lu Xiang every day. Here, she has no place to spend money, but she still wants to earn money. She thinks it is better to have her own money, so she still has to do part-time job. The money Lu Xiang gave was his, not something she earned herself. She yawned, having been feeling sleepy lately. Forget it, don't think about it anymore. There will always be a way. Just go to sleep. Because the air conditioner was on, there were no mosquitoes to disturb her and no heat to rise, so she slept well. At 7 in the morning, she woke up, washed, and went downstairs. When she arrived at the restaurant, she saw Lu Xiang already having breakfast. When Aunt Li saw her get up, she said, Madam, you are up. Please sit down. I will bring you breakfast. Okay, thank you. Yi Shengsheng sat down a little further away from Lu Xiang. She looked at the man. Mr. Lu, good morning. Lu Xiang was helpless. Shengsheng, change your name. Yi Shengsheng remembered that yesterday Madame Lu said that Master Lu was called by outsiders. Now she was asked to change it. She couldn't just call him by his name, so she could just call him Morning, Uncle. Lu Xiang was speechless. He thought, forget it, take it slow, and so he responded and looked at her. Today is their weekend. Do you want to stay at home or go out for a walk? There is a driver at home. Let them arrange a pickup. I will go to work. Chapter 9 Bleeding. He instructed Yi Shengsheng. Yi Shengsheng felt a little warm in his heart when he heard the caring tone and instructions, and he nodded softly. After that, I never spoke to him again. Soon, breakfast was served and Yi Shengsheng ate it quietly. Lu Xiang was full just halfway through his meal. Shengsheng, I'm going to work. call me if you have anything. Yeah. Yi Shengsheng looked at him and thought for a moment. Uncle, walk slowly and be careful on the road. Lu Xiang chuckled, and seeing that she looked so well behaved, he went to work with peace of mind. After breakfast, Yi Shengsheng read a book for a while and wanted to go for a walk outside to see how big this place was and what was there. Seeing her coming downstairs, Aunt Li hurried forward and said, "Madam, do you want to go for a walk? I'll have someone take you for a walk. The young mistress is a precious baby now, and there are 2 little masters in her belly, so nothing can happen to her." "Okay, thank you for your hard work, Aunt Li," Yi Shengsheng said politely. Aunt Li was very happy. "Okay, then I'll take the young lady for a good stroll." After walking for an hour, Yi Sheng didn't feel very tired, but she didn't expect this place to be so big. There are mountains behind her, and she wants to walk a little further and go to the artificial lake in the back mountain to see the fish. But Li Ma refused to let her go and took her to a shady place to sit down. "Madam, you can't go any further." Li Ma refused to let Yi Shengsheng leave no matter what, not even walking back. She just asked someone to drive a sightseeing bus over to take Yi Shengsheng back. Yi Shengsheng looked at her nervous expression and smiled. "Auntie Li, just walk back." But Li Ma refused. Yi Shengsheng had no choice but to sit and wait for the car to pick him up. After the car came to pick them up, as soon as they got home, the cool air hit them and Yi Shengsheng sighed. She spent the rest of the time reading. At noon, Yi Shengsheng had lunch alone and she was very satisfied. Just as she was about to take a break, her cell phone rang. It was her part-time hotel supervisor who sent her a message, saying that the store was busy today and asked if she was feeling better and whether she could go to work. She thought about it and decided that she had to earn money on her own, whether she wanted to have children or not. So she replied to her boss and said she would go there right away. As soon as she came downstairs, Aunt Li came up to her. "Madam, are you going out?" "Mother Li, I have something to go out for." At Li Ma's repeated insistence, Yi Shengsheng got into the driver's car and headed to his part-time job. The driver stopped the car at the place designated by Yi Shengsheng. As soon as Yi Shengsheng got off the car, he ran into the hotel. There were indeed a lot of people there today. She quickly changed into her work clothes and started working. 7:30 in the evening is the busiest time for the hotel. Yi Shengsheng served the dishes quickly, and she paid special attention to her feet for fear of falling. "I have a strange feeling in my heart. I clearly haven't decided whether to keep them or not, but I subconsciously want to protect them. Shengsheng, bring the dishes from room 888 up." The foreman called out, bringing Yi Shengsheng back to his senses. Yi Shengsheng responded quickly and ran to the food delivery area. She carefully carried the dishes upstairs, but when she was about to reach the door of the box, suddenly my foot slipped, my hands shook, and all the food fell to the ground. Seeing herself falling to the ground, she subconsciously protected her stomach. Next second, a pair of strong and powerful hands caught her, but she did not feel the expected pain. Yi Shengsheng opened her tightly closed eyes and looked at the man. "It's Lu Xiang." Lu Xiang was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. He came to the social event and just as he walked out of the elevator, he saw a familiar figure. Just when I confirmed that it was Yi Shengsheng and was about to call home to confirm, I saw her slide. If he hadn't acted quickly, the consequences would have been disastrous. Yi Shengsheng stood up quickly like a child who had done something wrong, lowering his head and saying, "I'm sorry." "Are you hurt anywhere?" Lu Xiang asked nervously. "I'm fine, Yi Shengsheng was about to say "I'm fine." Next second, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach, which made her frown. She put her hand on her belly in panic and looked at Lu Xiang in panic. "Shengsheng, what's wrong?" Lu Xiang was shocked when he saw that her expression was not right. It seems like something is flowing out," he said with a trembling voice. Then, Yi Shengsheng looked down at the uniform skirt. The blood was flowing down her thigh, looking shocking on her fair skin. "Uncle, woo-woo." When Yi Shengsheng saw the blood, she was so scared that she burst into tears. Lu Xiang looked in the direction she was looking, then immediately picked the person up and walked out with big strides. "Ju Quan, go to the hospital." Lu Xiang called out to the person standing behind him. "Shengsheng, don't cry, let's go to the hospital." Lu Xiang gently comforted the person in his arms. "Uncle, I hurt." Yi Shengsheng cried, "Will the baby be okay?" "It's okay, we'll be at the hospital soon." There was panic in Lu Xian's voice that he himself was not aware of. Uncle, woo-woo. Yi Shengsheng cried and said, I want a baby, I want to give birth to 2 babies. After saying this, Yi Shengsheng fainted from the pain. Lu Shiyan's heart tightened and he urged, Ju Quan, drive faster. When they arrived at the hospital, Lin Jiyuan and the doctor were waiting at the hospital entrance. My dear, there is more to this chapter. Please click on the next page to continue reading. It's even more exciting later. Lu Shiyang carried Yi Shengsheng out of the car, put her on a stretcher, and immediately pushed her into the emergency room. Oh my god, you. Lin Jiyuan was so scared that he was shaking all over. He swallowed back the words he wanted to say when he saw Lu Shiyang's face. Lu Shiyang stood at the door of the emergency room, staring at the red light. Half an hour later. The lights went out and the doctor came out. Doctor, how is the patient? Lu Shiyang's voice was hoarse. The patient has threatened miscarriage and her progesterone level is a little low. She cannot lift heavy objects and needs to rest more. The doctor said respectfully. Lu Shiyang breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Lu, don't play like this next time. I have a bad heart. Lin Jiyuan covered his chest with his hands. Chicken soup. Lu Shiyang gave him a cold look. I'll arrange it right away. Lin Jiyuan hurried to do it. After Yi Shengsheng was transferred to the ward, Lu Shiyang sat beside the bed and looked at the person on the bed with a pale face. What came to my mind was the scene in the car where she said she wanted to give birth to the baby. He kept looking at Yi Shengsheng with a complicated expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. Yi Shengsheng woke up slowly, and her first reaction after opening her eyes was to sit up and put her hand on her stomach. Her beautiful eyes were instantly filled with tears. Wow. Lu Shiyang quickly reached out his hand and gently wiped her tears. Shengsheng, don't cry, the child is fine. Yi Shengsheng looked at Lu Shiyang and asked with sobs, Uncle, is it true? Really, it's okay, just take some rest. Lu Shiyang said gently. Uncle, I will listen to you from now on. I will never work part-time again. I will listen to you and stay at home to take care of the baby, woo-woo. Yi Shengsheng was really scared. Lu Shiyang coaxed the person for a long time before he calmed down. Gurgle. There was a noise in the ward. Yi Shengsheng lowered his head in embarrassment. The next second, I heard the man's low chuckle. Chapter 10 Leaving the Child Behind. Shengsheng, eat on time from now on. Lu Shiyang said, picking up a bag, opening the box, and taking out the chicken soup, rice, and vegetables. The rich smell of chicken soup went straight into my nose. But this made Yi Shengsheng, who was already feeling hungry, start to retch. She covered her mouth and tried to get out of bed, but the fork was still in her hand. Lu Shiyang quickly brought over the trash can. After vomiting, Yi Shengsheng looked up and saw Lu Shiyang standing beside him with a bottle of water. Shengsheng, rinse your mouth. Lu Shiyang handed her the water. Yi Shengsheng took it and thanked him. I just rinsed my mouth, sat down, and smelled the chicken soup. Lu Shiyang followed her gaze, reacted, picked up the chicken soup neatly, and walked out. When I returned to the ward, Yi Shengsheng was much better. Uncle, I'm sorry, There's nothing to be sorry about. Lu Shiyang frowned. Shengsheng, will you always vomit like this? No. Yi Shengsheng shook his head and thought for a while. I vomited when I woke up a few days ago, so I went for a checkup. I didn't vomit yesterday or the day before yesterday. Hearing her say this, Lu Shiyang frowned. He said softly, we need to observe for a few days. Eat these tonight, and I'll have the nutritionist prepare them and send them over later. Okay, Tilda. Lu Shiyang said he had something to do and had to go out for a while. Yi Shengsheng sat on the hospital bed, staring at his stomach in a daze. It's too dangerous today. Whenever I thought about the loss of my 2 children, a wave of discomfort spread through my heart. She remembered Lu Shiyang's nervous expression in the car. The uncle is actually a very nice person, unfortunately, the child is fine. Sudden. Her eyes became firm, as if she had made up her mind. After a moment, Lu Shiyang returned to the ward. Yi Shengsheng looked up at him and met his eyes. The uncle wasn't that scary after all. Uncle, I've made up my mind. I want to keep these 2 babies, but you have to remember what you promised before. If I keep the babies, you have to let me see them when I want to, and you can't regret it. Okay, Shengsheng, I said I would be responsible. Lu Shiyang didn't expect that he just went to the doctor to ask about some precautions, and after coming back, she would tell him about this matter so carefully. On their way to the hospital, she had already said once that she wanted to keep the baby. Lu Xian's voice was gentle, and his words soothed Yi Shengsheng's uneasy heart. Yi Shengsheng remembered that he had classes the next day, so he sent a message asking for a week off. She looked at Lu Xiang wiping her hands with a towel, and her heart felt warm as she watched him look so serious and careful. No one has ever been so nice to her. Although he is a little older, he is really good to her. Looking at the man's profile, I couldn't help but sigh that the uncle was so handsome. After 2 days of fear in the hospital, the doctor said during the ward rounds that there was no serious problem and I just needed to go home and take good care of myself. Yi Shengsheng breathed a sigh of relief, finally able to go home. Lu Shiyang has been very busy these past 2 days. In addition to taking care of her, he also has to work. As soon as she wakes up at night, he will immediately come forward to ask. Yi Shengsheng felt uncomfortable seeing the bruises under Lu Xian's eyes. After returning home, Yi Shengsheng lay in bed for a few days as he had to go to school the next day. Otherwise you will not be able to catch up with the missed classes. As the sky was getting darker, Lu Xiyang had not returned yet. Aunt Li watched her look towards the door from time to time and said with a smile, "Madam, the young master has something to do today and will be back later." Oh tilde. Yi Shengsheng felt a little lost, she didn't know what was wrong with her. After staying in the hospital for 2 days, I felt a little fragile. Could it be because of the pregnancy? Thinking about it, he shook his head. I went upstairs to take a shower because I have to get up early for school tomorrow. Yi Shengsheng had just finished washing up and walked out of the bathroom wearing a nightgown and slippers. While drying my hair, I heard a sound behind me and thought it was Aunt Li coming in. "Mother Li, I'm done. Can you smell this milk-scented shower gel? Is it fragrant?" Yi Shengsheng has been getting along very well with Li Mar these days and wants to share everything with her. Yi Shengsheng stretched out his hand. Lu Xiyang looked at the soft and white arms in front of him. The faint smell of milk seeped into his nose and eroded his nerves. Not only the smell of milk, he also smelled a faint floral scent. The medicine he took that night was not enough to make him lose his mind, but it was the fragrance that made him fall completely. Yi Shengsheng wiped his hair with one hand while keeping the other arm raised. She hadn't yet realized that the person standing next to her was not Mother Li. "It smells nice and fragrant." A hoarse male voice entered my ears, and the air around me began to become charming. Yi Shengsheng subconsciously withdrew his hand, took off the towel from his hair, and looked over quickly. Eyes met. There seemed to be a bottomless vortex in the man's deep eyes, as if it was going to suck her in. "What's wrong? Are you stupid?" The man chuckled. Yi Shengsheng reacted and smiled awkwardly. "I thought it was Aunt Li who came in." "Uncle, you came back so late. Have you had dinner?" Yi Shengsheng asked. "I've eaten." Lu Xian's voice was deep and hoarse. Yi Shengsheng took his hand and said, "Uncle, can I go to school tomorrow? If I don't go to class, I won't be able to keep up." Her voice became quieter and quieter. Lu Xiyang looked at the woman's soft red lips that were like jelly. He couldn't control himself and kissed her directly. Yi Shengsheng wanted to hide, and put her hands on his chest, trying to push him away, but he was too strong and she had nowhere to escape. Her heart was pounding. Until Lu Xiyang saw that she couldn't breathe and her little face turned red, this little girl was really sweet. Yi Shengsheng took a deep breath as he got some fresh air. "Uncle, what do you want to do?" Lu Xiyang raised his eyebrows. "Sorry, I couldn't control myself, my voice was too sweet." Yi Shengsheng. When she came to her senses, she quickly jumped onto the bed and hid herself under the quilt. "Uncle, I have to get up early for school tomorrow. I'm going to sleep." Lu Xiyang sighed helplessly. Turned around and went out. Yi Shengsheng heard the door closing and poked her head out from under the quilt, only to meet the man's smiling eyes. She wanted to hide back under the quilt again. "Shengsheng, you will get sick if your hair is wet." Lu Xiyang felt a little annoyed that he had just lost control and scared the little girl. "Come, let me help you blow dry your hair." Lu Xiyang gestured to the hair dryer in his hand. No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the sound of the hair dryer. The air was filled with the sweet scent of milk. "Uncle, can you promise me one thing?" Yi Shengsheng said in a low voice. Chapter 11 Greed. "What's wrong? Your future wife must be good to the 2 babies, okay? Yi Xingxing's tone was cautious. Lu Shiyang was stunned for a moment. The little girl didn't understand what he said. He said he would be responsible for her. In addition to spending the past few days together, he found that he really liked this little girl. Now the little girl wants to abandon him after giving birth to the baby? Shengsheng, my wife will only be you, no one else. Besides, don't you want to accompany the babies to grow up with me? Yi Xingxing could feel that Lu Xian's kindness to her was genuine, but she was always afraid that it would be a flash in the pan. Just like her parents, so she didn't dare to give her heart easily. Not to mention, the gap between them is extremely large. She stared at him blankly. I. Not wanting to hear her say no, Lu Shichen simply grabbed the back of her head and expressed everything he wanted to say in this kiss. The lingering kiss confused the mind and made the person in control feel extremely confused. He never thought that this day would come. After a moment, Yi Xingxing leaned on his chest and breathed heavily. She was at a loss about this kiss. Lu Shiyang felt that he had really lost control. He was so greedy for the little girl. He was afraid of scaring her away, so he decided to take it slow. He hugged Yi Xingxing and stroked her back gently. Shengsheng, can we try to date? Uncle, I'm fine, you don't have to. This is my first time too. Don't you want to be responsible for me? Lu Shiyang interrupted Yi Xingxing with a somewhat aggrieved expression on his face. However, what he thought in his heart was, it would feel good to have a little girl as my wife. If I want a wife, I have to be thick-skinned. But now, Yi Xingxing looked dazed, as if he was frightened. Shengsheng, let's try to date, okay? Lu Xian's heart was beating fast. He had agreed to take it slow, but why did he seem to scare people away as soon as he opened his mouth? Yi Xingxing came back to his senses and said, Uncle, I will be responsible. His face looked serious. It made Lu Xiang laugh. Well, go to bed early. You have to go to school tomorrow. Lu Xiang said gently. Okay, Tilda. Watching Yi Xingxing fall asleep, Lu Xiang got up and left the room. He has been thinking a lot these days, wondering if he really wants to find someone to spend the rest of his life with. Then let's go with this little girl. He likes her very much. As for the others, there is still a long way to go. The next day, Yi Xingxing has to go to class, so she has to go out early. Although the school is close, she still has to leave early so as not to be late. After breakfast, I got into Lu Xiang's car. Looking at the man in the cab, she understood that what he said about picking her up was true. Yi Xingxing sat in the back seat, very quietly. She felt a little bit depressed being in the same space with Lu Xiang. She was stunned by the man's serious driving, his slender fingers on the steering wheel, and his handsome profile. Until Shengsheng, please keep reading for a while. Yi Xingxing smiled awkwardly, turned his head and looked out the window. Uncle, just drop me off at the intersection ahead, I'll walk over by myself. She didn't want Lu Xiang to drive the car to the school gate or inside, as it would attract too much attention. Lu Xiang responded. Yi Xingxing thought for a moment and said, just let the driver pick me up from now on, and you won't have to work so hard. After all, he is so tired at work. However, Shengsheng, don't you want to see me? Yi Xingxing. Yi Xingxing didn't dare to speak and didn't know how to respond. She thought about it and thought that it seemed to be like this for all boyfriends and girlfriends. He said let us try dating, so if he wants to pick her up, then he can do it. When they were still some distance away from the school, Lu Xiang stopped the car and Yi Xingxing breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to get off the car, she heard a man's voice, Auntie Li will bring lunch over at noon. Yi Xingxing was stunned for a moment. Okay, Tilda. After closing the car door, he thought about it and knocked on the front window. The man rolled down the window and looked at her softly. What's wrong? Goodbye, uncle, be careful on the road. Then she ran towards the school as if escaping. Lu Xiang watched her enter the school before leaving. Yi Xingxing walked into the classroom and sat down in the corner. She sat in this position every time, and always alone. She didn't have a good relationship with her classmates. It wasn't that she was unfriendly, but those people in the dormitory gathered together with her classmates to isolate her. While the teacher was teaching, Yi Xingxing was taking notes seriously. Several of her roommates inadvertently turned their heads to look behind them, and she seemed to see a familiar face. She poked the two followers beside her and said, Look, isn't that the poor fellow? The two followers took one look and said, "It's really her. Look, aren't the clothes she's wearing the latest styles from the Yu family?" Shikasin said. "It seems to be true," the other two agreed. "This dress costs more than 30,000 yuan. Where did she get the money to buy it? She wouldn't really sell it, would she?" Shikasin's sarcastic tone sounded. Maybe he has really figured it out and no longer wants to use studying to get ahead. He should take advantage of his youth. She should thank our cushion. If it weren't for our cushion showing her a clear path, she would still be wearing the clothes she picked up from the garbage dump. Talking and talking. The three of them covered their mouths and laughed. Yi Shengsheng was completely unaware of this and sat in the back listening to the class carefully and taking notes. She was very busy throughout the morning, rushing to the next classroom after finishing class in 1. Just after the last class, she received a call from Li's mother and they agreed on a meeting place. Yi Shengsheng walked out of the school. A black Maybach was parked at the entrance of an alley not far from the school, and Mother Li was standing next to the car holding an insulated box. Yi Shengsheng saw it as soon as he walked out of the school gate and hurried over. "Madam, slow down, don't run, there's no rush." Aunt Li looked terrified. "Auntie Li, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long." Yi Shengsheng said politely. "It's okay. I'll wait for you here when I bring you food next time." Aunt Li said with a smile. "Okay, thank you." Yi Shengsheng took the thermal box. "Auntie Li, you go back and have a rest first. I'll bring the lunch box back in the evening." "Okay, I'll watch you go into school, then I'll be back." Under the gaze of Li's mother, she slowly walked into the school. Not wanting to go back to the dormitory, she found a quiet place, sat down and ate her nutritious meal. There was only one class in the afternoon, and after it, she went back to the dormitory and wanted to take a nap. As soon as she entered the room, her roommates were not there. She lay down on the bed, feeling a little sleepy. After a moment, a loud noise woke her up. Do you think she's so blatant in prostitution? She hasn't been back to the dormitory for a long time. Look, someone has brought her food these past 2 days. Chapter 12 Pregnancy Reactions. Shikasin's contemptuous voice rang out. "Stop talking." The person who spoke pointed. "What are you afraid of? You dare to do it but you don't dare let others say anything." Shikasin looked very shocked. Yi Shengsheng didn't want to pay attention to them, closed his eyes and continued to sleep. "I slept in a daze, listening to my roommates all kinds of groundless speculations about me." Ring. An unexpected ring rang in the silent conference room, and everyone looked at each other. Their eyes seemed to be saying, "Who is this, daring to ring the bell during the meeting of the living devil? Are you trying to die?" But the next second, Lu Xiang, who was sitting in the main seat, picked up his cell phone, turned off the ringtone, and said coldly, "That's all for today, we'll continue tomorrow." After saying this, he walked out amid everyone's astonished gazes. The conference room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. They couldn't believe what they saw. Lu Xiang didn't even go back to the office. He went straight to the parking lot and drove to the school to pick up Yi Shengsheng. But after he received the call from Yi Shengsheng, he felt that the people around him were in a low mood. "Shengsheng, did someone bully you?" "No." Yi Shengsheng's voice was weak. She leaned her head against the car window, closed her eyes and said nothing. Lu Xiang drove steadily, paying attention to the emotions of the people around him from time to time. After returning home, Yi Shengsheng went back to his room after dinner. Lu Xiang knew that she might need some time to adapt to some things, so he didn't bother her. Yi Shengsheng was doing exercises in the room, immersing himself in the sea of questions and forgetting those unpleasant words. When I stopped writing, I looked at my phone and it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. She was a little surprised that it took her so long to do the questions. The days go by. Yi Shengsheng also saw from Lu Xian's actions that he was really good to her, which made her feel touched and burdened. She told herself in her heart that she could not rely on his kindness to her, nor could she let him down, and she had to study hard. The air conditioner was on in the room, it was cool and comfortable, and I didn't want to get up from sleep. The alarm rang in the morning. She opened her eyes, groped for her phone in a daze to turn off the alarm, got up, washed, and went downstairs to have breakfast. "Good morning, uncle." "Shengsheng, can you change your name? It makes me sound old when you call me that." Lu Xiang complained. What's that called?" "Master Lu." Yi Shengsheng was very confused. Lu Shiyang sighed. Forget it, just call me uncle. Yi Shengsheng thought for a moment and said in a voice as quiet as a mosquito, Ian. Yeah. Lu Shiyang responded with a smile, it's okay. If you're not used to it, just call it what you're used to. Okay tilde. The servant brought the breakfast quickly and it looked delicious. Yi Shengsheng picked up the spoon and was about to eat. Just as she brought the food to her mouth, she smelled a fishy smell. At that moment, she dropped the spoon in her hand, covered her mouth, stood up and rushed to the bathroom on the first floor. I vomited and threw up everything I had eaten yesterday. Her action alarmed everyone in the villa. Lu Shiyang and Li Mar followed closely behind her. He gently stroked Yi Shengsheng's back and watched her vomiting violently, and glanced at Li Mar who was standing aside. What's for breakfast today? Mother Li was also very nervous. Today's breakfast is shrimp and crab porridge. It is normal to have pregnancy reactions in the first 3 months. Lu Shiyang frowned, he didn't know how to make her feel less uncomfortable. It took a long time. Yi Shengsheng finally recovered, raised his head, and washed his hands and face. She knew that what Li's mother said was correct. It was a pregnancy reaction. The last time she vomited was when she was hospitalized for observation. She also knew that pregnant women would vomit, but she didn't expect that just the smell of some seafood would make her vomit like this. It's only been 2 months. What if he vomits at school? She was still thinking about what to do when the voice beside her brought her back to her senses. Shengsheng, are you still feeling uncomfortable? She looked at him and shook her head, much more comfortable. Lu Shiyang helped her walk out, watching her expression all the time. When she returned to the dining table, breakfast had been changed to lean meat porridge. This time, she carefully smelled the porridge first. I didn't feel like vomiting, so I started eating with peace of mind. Lu Xian's eyes were deep, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, he said, don't go to school today. Rest at home, okay. He was worried about what would happen to her at school and about her health. Yi Shengsheng felt that as long as he didn't smell anything strange, there should be no problem. She shook her head. It's okay. It's just a normal reaction. I don't eat anything outside. It won't be a problem. Lu Shiyang didn't want to make her unhappy, so he nodded with a frown, it's time for the prenatal checkup. Why don't you take a day off today and go directly for the prenatal checkup? Although Yi Shengsheng was unhappy, he still agreed. Send a message to the school to ask for leave. Then I got in the car and went to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. Along the way, Yi Shengsheng was a little depressed. Fortunately, it is still the familiar hospital. The equipment here is the most comprehensive, and it is the best place to have a prenatal checkup. Lu Shiyang held her hand the whole time. After a series of examinations, both children were found to be fine, but the mother was too weak and needed more supplements. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. After all, there are 2 children, so it will be more difficult. Lu Shiyang remembered this and went back to ask the nutritionist to do a better job and make up for her previous losses. The examination was completed and it was lunchtime when I got home. When the nutritious meal was brought to the bed, Yi Shengsheng saw that the portion was obviously larger. Shengsheng, you should eat more. It's good for your health. As soon as Lu Shiyang finished speaking, his cell phone rang. After answering it, he looked at Yi Shengsheng and said, I have to go to the company. I will come back to have dinner with you in the evening. Uncle. I'm fine, you go and do your work. Yi Shengsheng was about to call Yang, but it felt awkward, so he changed his words and spoke obediently. Lu Shiyang walked over and kissed her forehead, wait for me to come back. Yeah. Yi Shengsheng blushed and was dazed. She was still not used to this kind of intimacy. After lunch, Yi Shengsheng sat downstairs for a while. Then he felt sleepy and went back to his room to sleep. Without the alarm clock, I slept very comfortably. It was almost dinner time and Lu Shiyang hadn't returned yet. Yi Shengsheng looked at the door from time to time, but didn't see anyone. Madam, dinner is ready. Aunt Li's voice rang out. She walked towards the restaurant with a lost look in her eyes. Looking at the delicious and nutritious meal in front of her, she always felt like something was missing. Sudden. The young master is back, dinner is ready. Yi Shengsheng quickly turned his head and looked towards the door. Sure enough, when the man's tall and straight figure came into her eyes, her feeling of loss disappeared instantly. Yi Shengsheng smiled sweetly, her eyebrows curved, Uncle, you're back. Yeah. Lu Shiyang walked up to her, touched her head, and saw that the food on the table was untouched. Why don't you eat? Chapter 13 Depression. Waiting for you. Yi Shengsheng said subconsciously. Sorry, I was delayed by something. Lu Shiyang understood that she was thinking about what he had said about coming back to have dinner with her. It's okay. Yi Shengsheng shook his head. Uncle, did you have lunch? We ate it after arriving at the company at noon. Lu Shiyang said gently. Yi Shengsheng's mood was obviously much better than in the morning. After dinner, Lu Shiyang took her for a walk around the villa. After coming back and washing up, Lu Shiyang blew her hair dry and found that she had fallen asleep. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, Lu Shiyang's mouth corners slightly raised, his eyebrows and eyes were as gentle as water. He picked her up gently, put her on the bed, covered her with the quilt, and kissed her forehead. The next day, Yi Shengsheng came to school full of energy. He was in a good state in class today and could understand all the lessons. But when it was time for lunch, the situation has not gotten better since I vomited that day, and the pregnancy reactions have become more severe day by day. It's been half a month, but she still can't stand any smell, not even the smell of meat. She will vomit all over the place if she smells even the slightest bit of oil smoke. It's okay at home, I don't have to worry. But that's not possible at school, as she has to attend classes with so many people watching her. Several times, I smelled something and couldn't help but run to the bathroom to vomit in front of so many classmates. Her appetite was also decreasing, and she would vomit after eating. She became thinner and her spirit was getting worse. Now she is even more outrageous. She can't even stand the smell of the bathroom. I can't take care of anything else at all, I get distracted in class, and my energy isn't as good as before. She knew very well that she was no longer fit to go to school and that it would be better for her to rest, but she just didn't want to give up and she wanted to work hard. Lu Shiyang felt distressed as he watched her pregnancy reactions becoming increasingly severe, her inability to eat or sleep, and frequent vomiting. He hadn't expected that having a baby would make her suffer like this, and he had thought about not having the baby. Everything was fine before, how come it became so serious? Lu Shiyang came to pick up Yi Shengsheng from school. He held her fleshless hand and felt even more distressed when he saw her pale and listless face. He said nothing and drove home. Yi Shengsheng was in a bad mood. He called out, "Uncle," and stopped talking. She almost vomited bile at school today. She felt so uncomfortable that tears came out. While resting in the dormitory at noon, I heard Shikasin and Chen Yufei talking about what she was doing outside. This made Yi Shengsheng's already bad mood even worse. Yi Shengsheng only ate 2 bites of dinner and then vomited it all out. She sat on the bed, thinking about things. I wondered whether it was right or wrong for me to keep the child. Thinking that I am here, I am just a tool for giving birth to children. Mrs. Lu never came again after that day. She was only nice to me for the sake of the baby in her belly. Li Ma and the servants were respectful for the sake of the baby in their belly. The uncle said he wanted to give the relationship a try because I was pregnant with his child. If there were no children, would all these good things and respect no longer exist? No one will care about her or love her. Even her parents who raised her don't love her. Her own biological parents had even abandoned her, but why did they give birth to her if they didn't want her? As she thought about it, tears began to fall. Recently, she couldn't help thinking about these bad things. She knew it was not good, but she couldn't help thinking about it. The more I thought about it, the more wronged I felt, and tears kept falling. When Lu Shiyang walked into the room, he saw the little figure sitting on the bed, hugging his knees, with his eyes red and swollen from crying. His heart tightened, and he quickly walked forward and hugged her. "Why are you crying? Who bullied you?" Yi Shengsheng shook his head. "Uncle, I'm fine, I'm just in a bad mood, and I keep vomiting. It's uncomfortable." Lu Shiyang hugged her lovingly and coaxed her softly. He knew that this couldn't go on. Pregnant women are much more likely to suffer from depression than ordinary people. She had been in this mood recently, which made him worried. Afterwards, Lu Shiyang called a doctor, and after examination, he found that she was really depressed recently. "Shengsheng, has anyone bullied you at school?" Lu Shiyang asked softly. "No." Yi Shengsheng lowered his head. "I haven't been feeling well lately. I keep vomiting and want to sleep. I can't understand anything in class. I feel so tired. Then let's take a leave of absence from school and stay at home to take good care of the baby, okay?" Lu Shiyang asked tentatively. But when Yi Shengsheng heard about the suspension of study, he reacted strongly. No, I can't take a suspension of study. I don't want to take a suspension of study. If she took a leave of absence, she would graduate a year later, and she didn't want that. The reason she became like this is because of him. It was because he told her that he would have no descendants. Because of the 2 little ones in my belly, I couldn't eat or sleep well, and I wasn't in a good mood, which is why I became like this. But now, this man wants to deprive her of the right to go to school. Overbearing. Yi Shengsheng felt wronged and felt that his life seemed to have no meaning. I have no freedom here, I have no freedom at home, and at school I am called a whore by others. The more she thought about those unbearable words, the more her tears kept falling, and she couldn't stop them. She didn't want to cry, but. Half a semester is almost over. She doesn't want to take a leave of absence, and she can't do so. She has to study hard so that she can get more wealth in the future. When he saw her tears falling again, Lu Xian's heart suddenly panicked. Shengsheng, don't cry, you want to go to school, right? Yi Shengsheng looked at him with tears in her eyes, neither nodding nor shaking her head. But from her clenched fists and expectant eyes, it can be seen that she wants to go to school. But she is in a very bad condition now. What if? Lu Xiang explained patiently, but your current situation is indeed not suitable for attending school. Looking at those tears, Lu Xiang felt so distressed that he sighed helplessly. Baby, I didn't say I wouldn't let you go to school. How about this? You go to school first, and if you can't hold on, we'll ask for leave and think about it carefully, okay? Yi Shengsheng nodded. She was very tired today, with endless pregnancy reactions and humiliation from her roommates. Her brain was no longer able to think and she wanted to sleep. After a while, she fell asleep in Lu Xian's arms. She was indeed tired from crying. Lu Xiang felt a pain in his heart as he looked at the person sleeping in his arms. He wanted her to rest well at home, which would be good for her health. Chapter 14. Something happened to Shengsheng. But he didn't dare to stop her from going to school. She was already depressed, and if he forced her, the situation would only get worse. She has to figure it out herself. He gently put her on the bed and reached out to wipe the tears from her face. The next day, Yi Shengsheng got up and washed up. She had classes this morning. She walked into the bathroom and saw herself in the mirror. Even I was shocked. With this pale face and big dark circles under the eyes, I looked like Sadako at first glance. As soon as the taste of toothpaste entered my mouth, my stomach began to feel nauseous and I vomited. The cramps in my stomach came along with physical tears. She cleaned herself up slowly, and as soon as she opened the door, Lu Xiang was waiting outside. Shengsheng, good morning. Morning, uncle. Seeing that she was in a worse condition than yesterday, Lu Xiang was at a loss and helped her go downstairs to have breakfast. She had no appetite and put it down after eating 2 bites. When I got to school, I was not in good spirits, my mind was in a mess, and I couldn't understand a lot of things during the class. At noon, she went to Li's mother to get lunch and returned to the dormitory, thinking that she should have a good rest after lunch so that she would have enough energy to attend classes in the afternoon. Shikasin and Chen Yufei did not let her go and told her directly that she was selling an old man and she could sell him to anyone to make money. Yi Shengsheng had just taken 2 bites of food when he couldn't help but rush to the toilet and vomited all over the place. And they still didn't let her go. What happened to her? Did she sell herself out and get pregnant with some rich man's child? I look like I'm pregnant too. Yeah, you see, he even has the latest model of cell phone. It's obvious that he's selling it. Yi Shengsheng, do you have several sponsors? Can an old man satisfy you? I think he'll probably need some medicine to satisfy himself. After all, he's been exploited, so his appetite won't be small. Hey, do you think she can keep up if she has to accompany several people in one day? Maybe he is a master of time. Har 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 har. You're so annoying. You just tell the truth. Tell me, what if someone takes a picture of the old man when he sends her to school one day? Yes, it's better for people like this to drop out of school as soon as possible, so as not to bring trouble to us. That's right. He's still in the same dormitory with us. That won't do. We need to notify the instructor. This will bring shame to the school. As they talked, they went to find the instructor. Yi Shengsheng came out of the bathroom and heard their humiliating words. She also said that she would go find the instructor. Her legs felt weak and she walked to the bedside and sat down in a daze. Lu Shiyan's face appeared in her mind. She subconsciously picked up her phone and called Lu Shiyang. The call was connected quickly. Sounds. Lu Shiyan's gentle voice came from the other end of the phone. Lu Shiyang didn't hear any sound, looked at his phone, and called again. Sound. Woo-woo. Yi Shengsheng heard the man's voice again and burst into tears in an instant. Uncle, woo-woo. Shengsheng, don't cry. What's wrong? Did someone bully you or are you feeling unwell? Lu Shiyang was extremely anxious and walked out while talking, leaving a group of stunned people in the conference room. They couldn't believe what they heard. Was this still the same cold-faced devil? Is this still their high and mighty, cold and chilling Master Lu? The tone of their voice just now was so gentle and anxious, they must have seen it wrong. Lu Shiyang went directly to the school and found the principal, who personally took him to the dormitory. Not far away, I saw a group of people gathered at the dormitory door, making a lot of noise. Lu Shiyang had a bad feeling in his heart and walked forward with big strides. Yi Shengsheng was surrounded by 3 roommates and the instructor at this time. His eyes were red. She covered her eyes helplessly, squatted on the ground, and kept saying, I didn't. But no one believed her, everyone pointed fingers at her. Then Shikasin reached out and pulled her up. She tripped and almost fell. Fortunately, she held onto the bed frame. Shikasin pulled at her clothes sarcastically and said, if you don't have any, how can you afford such nice clothes and use such a nice phone? Isn't this selling it? The instructors all knew that Yi Shengsheng was working part-time to support his studies, eating steamed buns and vegetables every day, and relying on scholarships to pay for his tuition. She spoke loudly. The other 2 roommates also came forward. That's right. How can someone like this stay in school? It's really unlucky to share a dormitory with her. As they were talking, the 3 of them pushed Sang towards Yi Shengsheng. The instructor stepped forward and pretended to stop them, but someone pushed Yi Shengsheng hard. Stop! As soon as Lu Shiyang walked over, he saw Yi Shengsheng being pushed down and crashing into the table beside him. Everyone looked at Lu Shiyang, watching him walk towards Yi Shengsheng in surprise. Yi Shengsheng bumped into the table and felt a slight pain in her stomach. She subconsciously covered her stomach. Shengsheng, what's wrong? Lu Shiyang asked hurriedly. Uncle, let's go to the hospital quickly. When Yi Shengsheng saw Lu Shiyang, it was like he saw a life-saving straw. Okay. Lu Shiyang quickly picked up Yi Shengsheng and walked out. You must be the sponsor. This is a school. Who do you think you are? You can come and go as you please. The instructor blocked Lu Shiyang's way. Get out of the way. Lu Shiyang said coldly with a dark face. The instructor was shocked by his aura and subconsciously stepped aside. The principal just came over. Master Lu. You'd better give me an explanation. Lu Shiyang interrupted the principal and said coldly. Then, he rushed to the hospital. A crowd of people at the dormitory door felt that something was wrong. Shikasin looked at the handsome man and felt unhappy. Isn't he an old man? How can he be so young and handsome? Then. Sir, you haven't been deceived, have you? Yi Shengsheng has been with several old men. Lu Shiyang turned a deaf ear to him and walked out with Yi Shengsheng in his arms. The principal probably knew the reason for the incident and looked at the instructor with a worried look on his face. Do you know who that is? That's Master Lu. The instructor had a bad feeling. Lu Shiyang was waiting at the door of the emergency room, looking at his hands and the blood on them. It was the same as last time, but this time he felt very confused, panicked, and regretful. He should not have let her go to school today. At this time, the doctor came out. Lu Shiyang hurried forward. Doctor, what's going on? The doctor frowned. It's okay. Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Lu Shiyang. Doctor, as long as Shengsheng is safe, I don't need the child. The doctor smiled and said, the patient is fine. We will protect the fetus first. Let her lie down for a week and then check again. Chapter 15. I don't want a child. He sat in the ward, looking at the person on the bed, and what came to his mind was what the doctor had just said. It's not certain whether I can keep the baby. I was being well taken care of, but I haven't been able to rest well recently because of pregnancy reactions. In addition, today's collision was quite serious, so I can only save the tire first. Lu Shiyang admitted that he had fallen in love with this poor little girl. He couldn't bear to see her being in trouble, let alone crying. He will treat her well in the future, even if they have no children in their lifetime, so what? Nothing is more important than her. What abstinence, what aloofness, because she had already changed invisibly. He would give her everything she wanted. He will pamper her, love her, and make her happy. The phone vibrated. Lu Shiyang answered the phone immediately, glanced at the person on the bed and saw that he was not woken up, then got up and walked out. When Yi Xingxing woke up, she looked around and saw that she was the only one in the ward. After waiting for a long time, I didn't see any familiar figure coming. She felt a little lost. Ever since she moved into Lu Xian's house, Lu Xiang would always be by her side whenever she felt unwell, but he was not there today. She insisted on going to school and something happened. Was he unhappy and didn't want to care about her anymore? Is the child gone? Does he not want her anymore? When Yi Xingxing thought of this possibility, tears couldn't stop falling. It's all her fault. If she had listened to her uncle and not gone to school, nothing would have happened. Now, if the baby is really gone, how is she going to explain to Lu Xiang and old Madame Lu? Yi Xingxing had already decided to take a leave of absence during class today, but something like this happened. What should she do in the future? If the babies were gone, it wouldn't be a big deal for her to move out from Lu Xian's place, but what was worse was how would she face them when she returned to school? So tired. Just as she was thinking wildly and blaming herself, the door of the ward opened and a familiar figure walked in. As soon as Lu Xiang came in, he saw that she had woken up, with tears on her face. He quickly walked forward, took her hand, and kissed her forehead. "You're awake, are you feeling uncomfortable?" Her low and hoarse voice was full of tenderness, a tenderness that belonged only to her. Yi Xingxing came back to her senses and tears fell. "Don't cry, Shengsheng, the babies are fine. The doctor said that they just need to lie down and rest for a while. Don't cry." Lu Xiang wiped her tears in a hurry. Wow, wow, wow. When Yi Xingxing heard that the babies were fine, she could no longer hold back and burst into tears, crying out all her grievances and self-blame. Whenever she cried, his heart ached and he couldn't bear to see her cry at all. Lu Xiang took off his shoes, got on the bed, hugged her and coaxed her softly. The setting sun outside the window shines in, and the picture is very beautiful. It's been a while. Yi Xingxing's crying gradually became softer. Lu Xiang breathed a sigh of relief. It was the first time in his life that he fell in love with someone. It had been 30 years, and it was the first time that he realized that his emotions could fluctuate like this. "Baby, go to school whenever you want. I'll pick you up every day." Lu Xiang looked at her red eyes and said gently. He couldn't care less about all that. He knew that going to school was bad for her health, so he let her do whatever she wanted to do. At worst, we can arrange for someone to go to school with her, take care of her, and prevent those people from bullying her. At least, she will be a little happier. Yi Xingxing listened to his words and felt that he seemed even more different. But she has already thought about it. She sobbed and whispered, "Uncle, I've made up my mind. I want to drop out of school." Lu Xiang stroked her back gently. She was forced to drop out of school because of this accident. "Go to school if you like. The principal just called and said those people have been expelled. No one will bully you anymore." Of course, expulsion was the school's decision, but he would not let them go just like that. Anyone who dared to bully him would be made to suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Xingxing was very firm. "No, I want to drop out of school." Lu Xiang was a little confused. "Xingxing, didn't you want to go to school? Why did you change your mind?" He clearly remembered that yesterday he just asked her to consider it, but she reacted so strongly and even cried. Yi Xingxing sniffed. "I'm having a severe pregnancy reaction right now, and I'm not in a good mood. I can't keep up, and I can't understand what the teacher says. I'm under a lot of pressure." Lu Xiang thought about it and thought, yes, going to school now is very tiring, so he didn't think much about it. "I'll listen to you, then I'll arrange for you to take a leave of absence tomorrow and move your luggage back." "Okay." Yi Xingxing also breathed a sigh of relief. "I felt much better when I thought that I would never have to see those roommates again. When her babies are born and go to school, her new life will be a wonderful start. She believes that there are still more good people in this world." The next morning, Lu Xiang arranged for someone to arrange for Yi Xingxing to take a leave of absence from school. Yi Xingxing just needs to relax. Lu Xiang will take care of all the problems. At noon, Lu Xiang received a call and said, "Shengsheng, the formalities have been completed. I will ask Aunt Li to bring your luggage back to you this afternoon." Yi Shengsheng asked in surprise, "So fast?" She thought it would take several days, but she didn't expect it to be done in just one morning. The fact is, normally it would take several days, but the person handling it is Lu Xiang, the crown prince of the Imperial Capital. The principal had to call him Master Lu, and considering what happened yesterday, the principal certainly didn't dare to be negligent, and he got everything done in just half a day. Seeing that she finally had a smile on her face, Lu Xiang also curled up his lips into a smile. Finally saw her smile again, very beautiful. I'll make her smile more in the future. Really? Thank you, Ian. She was too excited just now, but she still felt a little awkward calling him Ian. Lu Xiang, no need to change it, just call me whatever you like. Yi Shengsheng laughed heartily. But then I thought again and decided to pack my things myself. It would be bad if Aunt Li took the wrong things. Anyway, they have been fired and I want to meet them again. I want to pack my things myself. Aunt Li doesn't know which things are mine. Lu Xiang was worried, but he didn't show it on the surface. Then let's go in a few days. Bring Aunt Li with you. The doctor said you need to lie down more now. Shengsheng, open your mouth. Lu Xiang held a spoon and handed it to Yi Shengsheng's mouth. Uncle, I can eat by myself. Yi Shengsheng reached out to take the bowl from Lu Xiang's hand. Lu Xiang dodged to the side and said, "The doctor said you need to lie down more and rest more." Yi Shengsheng had no choice but to compromise. Eat it bite by bite. Uncle, I'm full. Yi Shengsheng protested. Take 2 more bites. I can't eat any more. Good. Then, Lu Xiang finished eating the rest, and Yi Shengsheng was stunned for a moment. That was the rest of her meal, and that spoon was the one she had just used. Instantly, her face turned red. For the next week, Lu Xiang stayed with Yi Shengsheng in the ward. Except for going to the bathroom and taking a shower, she never got out of bed. Even Lu Xiang fed him meals. After a follow-up examination, the doctor said that everything was fine and that I just needed to rest more at home, but I had to be careful in the future. Chapter 16. Does he already have someone he likes? Lu Xiang and Yi Shengsheng finally felt relieved. After being discharged from the hospital and returning home, Yi Shengsheng felt much better. He felt very uncomfortable in the hospital. After lunch at noon, Yi Shengsheng felt sleepy and went back to his room to sleep. Lu Xiang did not go to the company, but went to the study to hold a video conference. Yi Shengsheng woke up from a comfortable nap, got up and checked the time. It was past 3 o'clock, so he thought about going to school to pack up. When he went downstairs, he didn't see Lu Xiang, so he asked the servant, "Where's the uncle?" The servant replied respectfully, "Madam, the master is in the study taking care of official business. I'm going to find uncle." After saying that, she walked towards the study upstairs in a good mood. She stood at the door of the study and raised her hand to knock. "Come in." A familiar and steady male voice came from the study. It was Lu Xiang. Yi Shengsheng gently opened the door and looked around. It was so big, with so many books and so many porcelains. It seemed like a small library. A little further in, there was a large desk where Lu Xiang was typing on the computer. He had just replied to an email when he looked up and saw the person coming. "Shengsheng, please sit down for a while. I'll be right there." Yi Shengsheng sat on the sofa and looked around the study room. "Uncle, don't worry. Go ahead and do your work. Everything here looks very expensive, but she likes the layout here." 10 minutes later, Lu Xiang finished his work and looked up to see the curious Yi Shengsheng, who was looking at the new things here, with the innocence on his face clearly visible. He hoped she would stay like this. Lu Xiang stood up, walked forward and took her hand. "Let's go." Yi Shengsheng nodded and let him hold her hand and walk out. Aunt Li was already waiting downstairs. When she saw the two of them coming downstairs hand in hand, she narrowed her eyes and smiled. "Master, Madam, good afternoon." Lu Xiang just hummed, and Yi Shengsheng smiled sweetly. "Auntie Li, good afternoon." The driver was already at the door, and they got in the car and went straight to the school. It's strange to say, the closer Yi Shengsheng got to the school, the more complicated her heart became, and she was still reluctant to leave. However, this is the best solution at the moment. The car drove directly to the downstairs of the dormitory. Yi Shengsheng was shocked, but when he thought of Lu Xian's identity, he no longer found it strange. She brought Lu Xiang and Li Mar to the dormitory door. Lu Xiang did not go in, but waited at the door. There weren't a lot of things, so it was quick to pack up. It only took half an hour to finish. Aunt Li brought several large storage bags, but they were not used. It was solved with just a small suitcase. Mother Li pushed the suitcase and went out. As soon as Yi Shengsheng stepped out of the dormitory door, Lu Xiang held her hand. He held Yi Shengsheng's hand in his palm. It was soft and small, and very comfortable. Yi Shengsheng looked at the two people's clasped hands. His hands were big, slender, beautiful and warm, and her eyes were smiling. The car drove out of the school slowly. What they didn't know was that at the other end of the dormitory, there was someone watching them. That person is Shikasin. She also came back to pack her things. She thought that everyone was in class at this time and no one would be in the dormitory. I chose this time, but I didn't expect to see a man holding Yi Shengsheng's hand. She didn't see the man clearly, but she would be able to recognize Yi Shengsheng even if he turned into ashes. She had been expelled from school and was hiding away for fear of being discovered. At this moment, she gave an evil smile. It seems that they are not the only ones who were fired. Yi Shengsheng still can't stay here. I guess she's been fucked by old men so often that she can't get out of bed and doesn't want to study anymore, right? But she was a little far away and couldn't see the old man clearly, but when she thought about the man that day, she thought he was really handsome. She opened the dormitory door and prepared to pack her things. She took a look at Yi Shengsheng's bed and desk. They were clean. It seemed that she was not the only one who was unlucky. Shikasin's mood brightened instantly. She hummed a song while packing her things. And Lu Xiang kept holding Yi Shengsheng's hand. Aunt Li had an auntie smile on her face and thought, this is good, their Lu family finally has a young lady. There are two little masters, that's great. After arriving home, the car stopped and Yi Shengsheng fell asleep. Lu Xiang didn't wake her up. He unbuckled her seat belt, bent down, got out of the car and picked her up. Looking at the person sleeping in the bed. She has curved eyebrows, long and thick eyelashes, and a small upturned nose, like a fine work of art. He subconsciously stretched out his hand and touched her face. Her face was so small, only as big as his palm. As time goes by, the relationship between Lu Xiang and Yi Shengsheng becomes better and better, and Yi Shengsheng is not afraid of him at all now. Lu Xiang was lowering his head and replying to Li Mar's message. The other party came over to toast him, and he ignored her after a few words. Lin Jiyuan leaned over and glanced at his phone, and typed a message, tell her I'll be home soon. Lin Jiyuan's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Is Mr. Lu serious? Are you really interested? After replying the message, Lu Xiang took a bite of the food and glanced at Lin Jiyuan's exaggerated expression. Next second. Snap. Lu Xiang put down his chopsticks and said, I'm done eating. He said he was done eating, and no one dared to say anything. A business event ended so simply in just half an hour. My dear, there is more to this chapter. Please click on the next page to continue reading. It's even more exciting later. Lu Xiang didn't give Lin Jiyuan any time to gossip. He got into the car and drove away. After Yi Shengsheng finished her dinner, it was not yet dark outside, so she sat in the garden pavilion and looked at the clouds in the distance. Lu Xiang walked over and said, next time, use a soft cushion to sit on. It will be more comfortable. When Mother Li heard this, she went to get it immediately. When Yi Shengsheng heard his voice, he immediately turned around and looked at him with a smile, Uncle, you're back. Yeah. Lu Xiang walked over and sat down next to her. Have you got a meal yet? I've eaten. Lu Xiang said as he pulled her hand and played with it. Aunt Li came over with a cushion, and Yi Shengsheng felt warm in her heart. Thank you, Aunt Li. You're welcome, madam. The young master likes you and cares about you. We are all very happy. When Yi Shengsheng heard this, his face turned red instantly. Lu Xiang did not refute, but nodded and stood up. Shengsheng, let's go for a walk. She glanced at Lu Xiang secretly. His face was stern and his features were upright. He looks cold on the surface, but he is very considerate. He knows everything about pregnant women and knows all the taboos. If it weren't for the difficulty the Lu family had in having children, and if it weren't for the pile of parenting books in the study, she would have doubted whether he had ever been a father. Suddenly, Yi Shengsheng felt inexplicably anxious. She seemed to know nothing about Lu Xiang. Could it be that he already has someone he likes? Realizing this, she stopped abruptly. Seeing that she didn't leave, Lu Xiang looked down. Seeing her watery eyes, she looked confused and dazed. What's wrong? Lu Xiang asked with concern. Chapter 17 Officially Meet the Parents. Yi Shengsheng collected his thoughts and asked, Uncle, do you have someone you like? Lu Xiang chuckled, Silly girl, I like no one else except you. Yi Shengsheng's heart fell back to its original place. She raised her little face and smiled sweetly. Lu Xiang looked at her smiling face and his Adam's apple rolled unconsciously. Meeting her clear eyes, his gaze fell on her red lips, and slowly, Lu Xiang approached her. Just at this moment, Yi Shengsheng's cell phone rang. It's a call from home. She quickly put her phone on silent mode and stopped looking at it. Lu Xiang sensed her panic. Whoever called, she didn't dare to answer. Yi Shengsheng really didn't dare to answer the call. Recently, her family would call her every few days, but she didn't dare to answer it. If her mother knew that she no longer had a part-time job, she would scold her. She subconsciously didn't want Lu Xiang to hear these things. She didn't want to embarrass herself in front of Lu Xiang. The phone kept vibrating, there was no way Lu Xiang didn't know. Why don't you answer the phone? Lu Xiang asked softly. No need to answer it. Yi Shengsheng lowered his head and said in a low voice. Lu Xiang probably guessed, is it a family member? Yi Shengsheng nodded. Are they treating you badly and bullying you? Lu Xiang asked again. Yi Shengsheng nodded again. Lu Xiang's expression was a little cold. He had indeed checked and knew that her family members treated her badly, but hearing it with his own ears was a different feeling. Don't worry, I will take care of it. Yi Shengsheng shook his head, Uncle, I can handle it, you don't have to worry about them, they don't deserve it. Are you sure? Lu Xiang felt that his little girl was too weak and couldn't deal with that family of vampires. But Yi Shengsheng's attitude was firm, I can do it. Lu Xiang chose to respect her. Finally, Yi Shengsheng turned off the phone. Yi's mother Zhu Hong started cursing when she heard the phone shut down tone. She dared to turn off her phone and told me to accompany Mr. Wang, but she actually injured him and made me pay. I will kill her if I find her. Zhu Hong was shaking with anger. Yi Daong, Yi's father, sat on the sofa and said nonchalantly, could it be that she knows that she is not our biological child? As soon as he said this, Zhu Hong glared at him, so what if you know? I've raised her for so many years, and I found her such a rich man, isn't it good for her? The next day, Aunt Li led a group of people, carrying a box and walking towards the study. Yi Shengsheng took a look and saw that there were books about pregnant women and parenting, as well as some other books. In the afternoon, Yi Shengsheng had nothing to do, so she went to the study, picked up a pregnancy encyclopedia, and began to read it carefully. But when she saw the precautions and safe positions during sex, her face felt hot and she couldn't bear to watch any longer. She likes to read design books, such as jewelry and clothing design. After a while, she felt sleepy and fell asleep on the sofa. Feeling her body in mid-air, she rubbed her eyes and said, Uncle, didn't you go to work? Why are you back? Lu Xiang didn't answer her, it's easy to get sick if you sleep here. You are in a special situation now and you can't take medicine. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Yi Shengsheng said apologetically. Lu Xian's expression softened a little, go back to your room and sleep. I'm not sleepy anymore. Yi Shengsheng struggled to get out of Lu Xian's arms. Lu Xiang took her hand and walked downstairs. As soon as she arrived in the living room, she saw two old people sitting on the sofa. One was Madame Lu whom she had met last time, and the other was an old man whom she had never seen before. But I have guessed the old man's identity to some extent. He should be the uncle's father. His serious face and sharp eyebrows are exactly like the uncle's. Will her two babies be as cold as them when they are born? Yi Shengsheng didn't dare to think about it too much, so he put his thoughts away, took a step back, and stood behind Lu Xiang. I only saw Lu Xiang calling out, Dad, Mom. Mr. and Mrs. Lu looked a little cold and just responded. Yi Shengsheng's scalp tingled. He said hello despite the strong pressure, Mr. Lu, Mrs. Lu. That's what she's called, right? There was no way. With her current identity, she really didn't know how to address them. Mr. Lu just hummed lightly, while Mrs. Lu smiled happily and said, R. When she saw the two of them holding hands, she smiled even more happily. The fact that they are holding hands proves that his son likes her. This is a good thing for the Lu family. It seems that their daughter-in-law's tea is not far away. Madame Lu smiled and stood up, walked over to pull Yi Shengsheng over and wanted to sit on the sofa. Shengsheng, how have you been lately? But Yi Shengsheng just stood there motionless. It's not that she didn't want to leave, but her hand was still being held and Lu Shiyang refused to let go. She tried to pull her hand out, but couldn't. Yi Shengsheng secretly glanced at Mr. Lu and Mrs. Lu and smiled awkwardly, afraid that they would be unhappy. Old Madame Lu looked at her son's hand that refused to let go, and after thinking it over, she decided not to argue with him anymore. It was his fault that he had just come to his senses. Shengsheng, come and sit here. Old Madame Lu pulled her and asked her to sit nearby. Yi Shengsheng looked at Lu Xian's hand and thought, how come this uncle has become so clingy? It's so bad to be like this in front of the elders without any manners. Looking at those bony hands, I admire them again. They are beautiful. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Shengsheng, I heard that you dropped out of school, asked Mrs. Lu. Mrs. Lu, I've been having severe pregnancy reactions lately and can't keep up with school. I might as well take a leave of absence and take good care of the baby. Yi Shengsheng said softly. Madame Lu nodded. Then let's take good care of him. Don't worry about his studies. Let Shiyang teach you later. He's a top student. He'll be able to keep up. It'll be hard work for you. She just heard the family doctor report that Yi Shengsheng was under too much pressure and it was so serious that he was almost suffering from depression. Of course, I also heard about the accident and the hospitalization. She went to the hospital at that time, but when she saw Lu Shiyang feeding her, she didn't show up. She knew everything was fine, so she went home. I couldn't help it today, so I wanted to come and take a look. Look how thin you've become. You must be so tired. Old Madame Lu stroked Yi Shengsheng's cheek lovingly. Mrs. Lu, it's okay. This is a normal pregnancy reaction. Yi Sheng declared that Mrs. Lu was really good to her. It's really okay. It will be fine after this period of time. I will try to eat more. Yi Shengsheng comforted her. She also wanted to gain weight, but she didn't want to vomit after eating. Come here, Shengsheng. This is the jade bracelet that has been passed down from our Lu family. I'm giving it to you now. Old Madame Lu said with a smile, and this is my gift to you. Madam, this is too valuable. I can't accept it. Yi Shengsheng looked at the red house deed and the priceless bracelet and waved his hands quickly. Lu Shiyang directly picked up the bracelet and put it on Yi Shengsheng's hand. Shengsheng, please accept it. This is a gift from your parents. It would be bad if you don't accept it. Lu Shiyang coaxed her patiently. Thank you, old lady. Yi Shengsheng said obediently. This is what I give you. Mr. Lu, who had been silent, spoke and handed over a bank card. Yi Shengsheng subconsciously looked at Lu Shiyang and saw him nod. She just responded, thank you, Mr. Lu. Okay. This counts as a formal meeting of the parents. Shengsheng, can I come to see you often in the future? Old Madame Lu asked for her opinion caringly. Chapter 18, Get Married. I didn't make the decision directly because of my identity. Yi Shengsheng nodded. After spending some time together, she knew that the Lu family were all good people. But the fact is not so. To have reached the current status, the Lu family is not a good family. As the saying goes, a good man is often bullied, and a good horse is often ridden. A family that is too soft-hearted will not last long. Of course, Lu Shiyang didn't want her to know this. She just wanted to give birth to the child safely and have the child be healthy and happy in the future. As for those messy things, she doesn't need to know. He will protect her, make her live a happy and carefree life, and never let her be bullied by anyone. During dinner, Yi Shengsheng had just sat down and rushed to the bathroom, covering his mouth without eating. Madame Lu and Lu Shiyang hurriedly followed. All women's pregnancies are different. Some have nothing at all, some have mild reactions, and some have severe ones. Yi Shengsheng belongs to the latter, which is considered a very serious pregnancy reaction. After a moment, Yi Shengsheng recovered and looked up to see Madame Lu, Grandpa Lu, and Lu Xian's nervous and concerned eyes. He smiled palely. I'm fine, this is a normal reaction. My dear child, you have suffered so much. Old Madame Lu wiped away her tears sadly. She thought to herself that if her son couldn't be with that girl in the end, she would adopt her as her daughter and find a good family for her. If Lu Xiang knew that she was trying to steal his son's girl, he probably wouldn't let her come again. Madam Lu, I'm fine. I'm used to it. It will be fine after this period of time. Yi Shengsheng hurriedly comforted her. The doctor said that as long as you can get through this period, you will get better slowly. Lu Xiang helped her back to the restaurant and everyone continued their meal. In the following time, Yi Shengsheng did not vomit again. He ate all the nutritious meal and felt full. She hadn't eaten so much in a long time. Every time she ate 2 bites, she would start vomiting, and she would vomit again after eating later. After dinner, sitting in the living room, Lu Xiang looked at Yi Shengsheng who was about to fall asleep. He looked at his parents again, then stood up and held Yi Shengsheng in his arms. Dad, Mom, Shengsheng is tired. I'll take her to rest. After saying this, he ignored the shocked looks from his parents. He went upstairs holding Yi Shengsheng. Old man, your son seems to have really come to his senses. Isn't this what you wanted? Humph, you make it sound like you don't want grandchildren. The 2 old men, whose combined age was over 100 years old, walked out arguing with each other. The next day, when Lu Xiang went out to work, Yi Shengsheng was still asleep. Before he left, he told her not to disturb her to rest, and now that she didn't have to go to school, he told her to get enough rest. After the meeting, Lu Xiang sat in the office, thinking about how he felt when he hugged Yi Shengsheng last night, that she seemed to be much thinner than before. He frowned and thought he had to give her some good nourishment, but now she couldn't eat. She seemed to be very uneasy and had no sense of security at all. Comprehensive. Zhu Quan came in immediately. Mr. Lu. How can a woman give her a sense of security and make her happy? Comprehensive. Zhu Quan really wanted to say, I don't even have a girlfriend, how would I know, but he didn't dare. He could only share what he often heard about this matter in the secretariat. Women care a lot about status, especially legitimacy, wedding ceremonies and so on. If you have time, spend more time with her shopping and watching movies. Lu Xiang nodded. Then I looked at Yi Shengsheng's information. Because her mother didn't want her to go to school, the community stepped in and did some work to allow her to go to school. She started her studies a few years later and turned 20 on May 20th this year. Suddenly, he thought of something and raised the corners of his mouth in a good mood. Made a phone call and went out. Got up and left the company. After arriving home, Yi Shengsheng was just about to have lunch when he was surprised to see someone suddenly appear. Uncle, aren't you at work? Why are you back? I'll come back to have lunch with you and take you somewhere in the afternoon. Lu Xiang said gently. Okay tilde. After lunch, Yi Shengsheng felt sleepy and went to sleep. When she woke up, she found herself in the car. She opened her eyes and looked out the window. Civil Affairs Bureau. Shengsheng, are you awake? Lu Xian's tone was very gentle. Uncle, what are we doing here? Yi Shengsheng asked puzzledly. Shengsheng, let's get married. Lu Xiang looked into her eyes and said seriously, don't worry, I will definitely treat you well. But don't you want to be responsible for me? Lu Xiang was afraid that she would refuse, so he interrupted her and said with a hint of grievance. Do you want our baby to be a bastard? Yi Shengsheng's brain froze for a moment. Then I thought, yes, if I get married, the babies will not be illegitimate children, but my family is too bad and I am not worthy of an uncle. She really liked Lu Xiang, and then she secretly made up her mind to study hard and try to make herself worthy of the uncle. Then she nodded. Lu Xiang took her hand and got out of the car, and they walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau together. The people who had been arranged were already waiting there. In just a few minutes, the marriage certificate was ready. When the two took the oath and took photos, they smiled at each other while holding the marriage certificate. Their smiles were filled with happiness, and the air was filled with a sweet scent. The photographer quickly pressed the shutter to capture the happiness of this moment. Yi Shengsheng hadn't come to his senses until he walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Am I really married to Lu Xiang? She stared at the red book in her hand in disbelief. Sudden. The red book in his hand was taken away. In case it gets lost, I will keep the marriage certificate. Lu Xiang said with a smile. After putting away the marriage certificate, he picked up Yi Shengsheng and said jokingly, Mrs. Lu, happy wedding. Yi Shengsheng was stared at by his deep eyes and her face turned red for no reason. Lu Xiang was touched and chuckled, then he carried her into the car and took her to the company. When exiting the elevator, the secretary saw Lu Xiang carrying a woman into the office. Everyone was so shocked that their jaws dropped. Shengsheng, I asked someone to buy some strawberry cake. Lu Xiang looked at her and his eyes softened. He opened the cake and placed it in front of Yi Shengsheng. Try it. Yi Shengsheng smelled the fragrance of the cake, took a spoon, scooped a bite and put it in his mouth, and the aroma of strawberry spread in his mouth. Delicious. Yi Shengsheng scooped a spoonful and handed it to Lu Xiang's mouth. Uncle, try it, it's delicious. Chapter 19. Living in a room and sleeping in a bed. Lu Xiang looked at her sweet smile and opened his mouth to eat unconsciously, and saw Yi Shengsheng's clear eyes looking at him. He smiled and nodded, it tastes good. He doesn't like sweets, but now he finds that sweets are delicious when eaten in different ways. Yi Shengsheng took a few more bites and suddenly stared at the spoon in shock. It seemed that she had just fed Lu Xiang with the spoon she had used. For a moment, she stood there in a daze, and her face turned as red as a boiled shrimp. Lu Xiang saw that she suddenly stopped eating and discovered that her face was red. He asked nervously, Shengsheng, are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? As he said that, he reached out and touched her forehead. She didn't have a fever, but she looked unwell. He looked at the cake on the table. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? Yi Shengsheng came back to her senses, not daring to look at him. She lowered her head with a wondering gaze. I'm not feeling unwell. The cake is delicious. Suddenly, he understood, licked his lips subconsciously, and stood up helplessly. His little girl was too shy. Then you eat first, I'll go take care of some work, and we'll be home soon. He didn't dare tease the little girl now, for fear of scaring her. It would be bad if she was not allowed to stay together at night. Yi Shengsheng nodded, and when she heard the sound of the keyboard, she secretly looked up at Lu Xiang. She touched her chest. Why was her heart beating so fast? After dinner in the evening, Lu Xiang took Yi Shengsheng's hand for a walk. After returning, Lu Xiang entered the study. Aunt Li brought in a cup of coffee. Master, the young mistress's things have been moved to the master bedroom. Then you. I'll sleep on the sofa. Aunt Li looked as if it was just as I expected. Judging from the way the young mistress treated the young master, she probably hasn't completely opened up to him yet. It turns out that she hasn't succeeded in winning over her young master yet. Master, the sofa is not comfortable to sleep on. Otherwise, I'd better clean it up. Li Ma was interrupted before she could finish her words. Need not. Mother Li nodded. Lu Xiang thought of something and his eyes softened. The servant brought Yi Shengsheng to the master bedroom. Madam, you will live here from today. Everything is packed. You can rest first. I will go down first. Yi Shengsheng stood in the room looking at the bed that was shining with joy, and froze in place. It took her a while to react. Yes, she and Lu Xiang got their marriage certificate today and are going to live together. She was nervous at the thought of them living in the same room and sleeping in the same bed. I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. When Lu Xiang finished his work and returned to the room, he saw Yi Shengsheng had already washed up and was sitting on the bed. Sorry, it's your wedding night today and I'm too busy with work. No. It's okay. Work is important. Yi Shengsheng was so nervous that he could hardly speak clearly. Lu Xiang knew what was wrong with her and smiled. You go to sleep first, I'll sleep on the sofa. Jingle. Lu Xian's cell phone rang. Go to bed early. I'm going to answer a call. Yi Shengsheng nodded quickly. Looking at the closed door, she breathed a sigh of relief. I slept in this room, occupying Lu Xian's bed, and remembered that he just said he wanted to sleep on the sofa. Lu Xiang has to work to support her and the baby, so he is already very tired. He has to sleep on the sofa at night, so he definitely won't sleep well. Thinking of this, she ran back to the room where she originally lived, picked up the quilt and pillow she had used to cover herself with, and lay down on the sofa and fell asleep. When Lu Xiang came back from work, he saw the bulge on the sofa. The door of the room was some distance away from the sofa and the light was dim. Only when he got closer could he see clearly that Yi Sheng's small body was curled up on the sofa, covered tightly with a quilt. Her cherry lips were slightly open as she slept soundly. He frowned. Why was the little girl sleeping on the sofa? He bent down, picked up Yi Shengsheng, and walked towards the bed. After cleaning up, He was about to go out when his hand was grabbed by a small hand. His body stiffened and he looked at Yi Shengsheng. She opened her eyes dazedly and said, "The sofa is not comfortable to sleep on. I'm tired." He looked at the girl's confused look, sat down on the bed, and stroked her cheek with his fingers. "Shengsheng, do you know what you are doing?" "Uncle, I'm sleepy." "Let's go to sleep." Yi Shengsheng subconsciously pulled Lu Xiang to lie down on the bed. As soon as Lu Xiang lay down, a round head appeared in his arms, rubbing against him. His face froze instantly. He looked down and saw that the person in his arms had fallen asleep again. "Comfortable." Yixing murmured unconsciously and rubbed his head again, which was a test of Lu Xian's endurance. Lu Xiang took a deep breath. He was a normal man, and he was a man who knew Yi Shengsheng well. For a moment, I felt a little distracted and my body tensed. "Shengsheng, don't move." After hearing these words, the person in his arms really stopped moving. Lu Xiang took a few deep breaths, hugged the person in his arms, and slowly closed his eyes. Yi Shengsheng slept soundly, but it was a pity for Master Lu, who had no sleepiness at all in the first half of the night and did not fall asleep until the early morning. Perhaps because he slept particularly soundly and felt safe last night, Yi Shengsheng woke up very early in the morning and felt trapped. "I couldn't move and felt very hot. I opened my eyes and a handsome face that was very close to me instantly enlarged in front of me. Uncle." She was so scared that she almost screamed, but fortunately she quickly covered her mouth. "What's going on?" She was clearly sleeping on the sofa, so how did she and the uncle end up sleeping on the bed and hugging each other? She moved her body slightly and realized that Lu Xiang seemed to be waking up. She was so scared that she quickly closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep, not daring to move. Lu Xiang woke up, his eyes were blurry for a moment, his memory came back, he looked at the sleeping face of Yi Shengsheng in his arms, couldn't help but smile, and kissed her forehead. "You slept soundly." Yi Shengsheng's hands gently grabbed the quilt, his heart beating faster and faster, almost jumping out of his throat. She felt the bed beside her floating up and heard the sound of a door closing quietly. She squinted her eyes and saw that the person had left. Only then did he open his eyes, sit up, and breathe deeply. She touched her burning face for a while before she came to her senses and told herself not to think too much. "I comforted myself like this and dawdled until I saw that it was already 9 o'clock. Usually Lu Xiang would go out for work at this time." She then walked out of the room. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to face Lu Xiang. She walked slowly downstairs to the dining room. Next second, a familiar figure came into view. Lu Xiang was sitting in the restaurant eating breakfast. When he heard the voice, he looked up at her. "Wake up, come and have breakfast." Chapter 20. Take it to work. Yi Shengsheng walked slowly to the dining table and sat down. Aunt Li brought breakfast. "Madam, this is lean meat porridge and eggs. Did you sleep well last night?" When Yi Shengsheng heard the word "last night," her face turned red and she subconsciously looked at Lu Xiang. "Master said you like strawberry cake, so we have that for today's snack, along with other snacks." Yi Sheng was so greedy that he was drooling when he heard the voice. "Thank you, Aunt Li." Li Ma smiled and said, "As long as the young lady likes it." "Mother Li, please sit down and have breakfast." Lu Xiang interrupted Li Ma's words. "Okay, you guys eat first, I still have something to do." Yi Shengsheng watched Li Ma leave, blinked, and looked at Lu Xiang. "Eat quickly, it will get cold soon." After breakfast, Lu Xiang went out. But within 2 minutes, Lu Xiang came back. "I brought Yi Shengsheng to work at the company yesterday. When I was tired from work, I could look up and see the little girl. It felt good." As soon as he got in the car, he made a decision that he would take the little girl to work, so he came back. Just like that, Yi Shengsheng was taken out of the door by Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang walked into the company's lobby, carrying his bag in one hand and holding Yi Shengsheng's hand in the other. The people in the company lobby were stunned and stared at the two people in front of them with their mouths wide open. "Am I dazzled? Is it really Mr. Lu?" Lu Xiang took out a hat from his bag and put it on Yi Shengsheng to cover her face. Boss Lu actually came to the company holding hands with a woman. "Who is that woman? Is Mr. Lu in a relationship? Oh my god, this is big news. The living king of hell actually has a woman." A few brave employees took out their phones and secretly took a few photos of them. Yi Shengsheng heard what they said and couldn't help but look at Lu Xiang. She saw him carefully holding her hand and walking towards the elevator. She reached out and tugged at his sleeve. There was a gasp from the side. That girl is so small and cute. Look at the look in Boss Lu's eyes, so gentle. That is a unique grace. Lu Xiang bent down and moved closer to Yi Shengsheng. Yi Shengsheng looked around nervously and whispered, I feel like someone is filming us. Let's hurry up and go to your office. Lu Xiang curled the corners of his mouth and reached out to touch her head. Good. Little did he know that his move sparked a heated discussion. Oh my god. Is this still our President Lu? He can actually laugh. Why do I feel that smile is so scary? Mr. Lu's head-patting killer. I was fed dog food early in the morning. Am I the only one who noticed that the living devil is late? This is unprecedented. Lu Xiang took Yi Shengsheng to the office, asked her to sit on the sofa and play with the tablet for a while, and then he went to the meeting. The news that the crown prince of the Imperial Capital, the famously abstinent Mr. Lu, brought a woman to work spread throughout the Lu-S building within an hour. Even the cleaning lady knew about it. Yi Shengsheng had no idea that she was being watched by everyone in the company. She was eating a small cake, sitting on the sofa, watching a tablet while eating. The cake touched the corner of her mouth. She stuck out a small piece of her pink tongue and rolled the cake into her mouth. After the meeting, Lu Xiang pushed open the door and saw this scene. His Adam's apple rolled and his pair of dark and deep eyes stared at her little mouth as she was eating the cake. Then, his eyes fell on the surging blood that could not be blocked by the V-neck, and he couldn't take his eyes away. Uncle, are you done with the meeting? Yi Shengsheng felt a burning gaze staring at him, and when he looked up, he saw Lu Xiang standing at the door. Lu Xiang came back to his senses, looked away, and walked forward. Is it delicious? Tasty. Lu Xiang bent down and placed his hands on both sides of her body. Let me try it. As he said that, he leaned over and kissed her. It's really delicious. Yi Shengsheng lowered her head and her ears turned red. She recently discovered that Lu Xiang would kiss her at every turn. She has also made up her mind that after getting married, she will live a good life. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed, and Yi Shengsheng's belly was slightly bulging because of the twins. Yi Shengsheng was dreaming. In her dream, she and her uncle were having a wedding. Sudden jingle. The ringing of her cell phone brought her back to reality from her dream. Yi Shengsheng looked at the caller ID in a daze. It was Su Zenan, a good sister who grew up together, so she picked up the phone. Zenan. Shengsheng, what have you been doing recently? I will be able to transfer here next semester. I came to school to look for you today, but I heard that you took a leave of absence. Yixing didn't know what to say for a moment. So many things had happened recently that she had never thought of telling Zenan about this. It's hard to explain in just a few words. Is it because your parents don't allow you to go to school? Su Zenan was a little anxious. No, just something. Yi Shengsheng's voice was sleepy. Su Zenan was stunned for a moment on the other end of the phone. It's already 10 o'clock. Can your parents let you sleep until now? Yi Shengsheng wanted to say that he was no longer in that house. But it's better not to talk about this on the phone. Yi Shengsheng changed the subject. Zenan, do you have something to talk to me about? Nothing, I just wanted to come to school to tell you that I will come here to study with you next semester. Great. I'll be able to see you more often from now on. By the way, Shengsheng, I just heard from the school guard that your mother came to the school to look for you. Yi Shengsheng woke up immediately and was so scared that he almost dropped his phone. Okay, I get it. She responded helplessly. Shengsheng, you can sign up for the jewelry design competition today. I'll wait for you at the cafe next to the school at 2 p.m. I have something to do, so I'll hang up first. See you in the afternoon. After Su Zenan finished speaking, he hung up the phone without giving Yi Shengsheng any chance to say no. Yi Shengsheng looked at the hung-up phone helplessly. Su Zenan really hasn't changed at all from childhood to adulthood, and is always so impetuous. After getting up, washing up, and having breakfast, Yi Shengsheng found Li's mother and said, Li's mother, my good friend asked me to meet him near the school at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I need to go out for a while. Okay, I'll ask the driver to take you there. Thank you, Aunt Li. Afterwards, Mother Li went to make arrangements. After waking up from lunch break, the driver took Yi Shengsheng to the door of a coffee shop near the school at 2 o'clock on time. She got off the car. Sound baby. Su Zinan rushed towards her excitedly and hugged her in a tight bear hug. Yi Shengsheng subconsciously protected her stomach. Chapter 21 Return Home. I missed you so much. Yi Shengsheng laughed happily. I missed you too. A moment later, the two signed up using the computer in the coffee shop. Su Zinan asked, Shengsheng, why did you drop out of school? Yi Shengsheng thought for a moment. It's just, something happened. I haven't contacted my parents. Where do you live now? Su Zinan keenly sensed that Yi Shengsheng was hiding something from her. Have you found a job? Yes, I think it would be absolutely right if you handed in the design of the necklace you designed earlier. Yi Shengsheng has become accustomed to Su Zinan's jumping thoughts, but it's also good this way, because she really doesn't know how to relate to what has happened to her during this period of time. Suddenly, she remembered that in the morning, Su Zinan said that the school guard said her mother had come to the school to look for her. She was going to go back and bring back the previous design draft. She looked at the time. At this time, they were all in the store and no one was at home. Zinan, I have to go home to get the design draft now. I'm leaving first. Let's make an appointment another day. I'll tell you what happened to me during this period. Seeing Yi Shengsheng's sincere face, Su Zinan didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, her parents had already used their connections to allow her to come here to study. There will be plenty of opportunities to go shopping together in the future. Are you going back now? But my dad will come to pick me up to take me back to my grandma's place. If you go back alone, your mom. Su Zinan was really worried that Yi Shengsheng would be beaten again when he returned. It's okay. There are customers in the store. She doesn't dare to do that. Yi Shengsheng comforted her. After a moment, Yi Shengsheng stood at the door of Yejir Station, looking at her parents busy inside. She took a detour to the back door. Come out the back door to a small house on the roof of the third floor. That's right, this is where she lives, a storage room on the rooftop that is filled with junk and even the bed is made of several stools put together. There was also a small bedside table, which her brother no longer used, so she moved it up to use. She opened the drawer of the bedside table and put all the drawings inside into her bag. Then he went downstairs and just as he reached the door of the store, he was seen by Yi's mother who was standing at the door. Yi Shengsheng, you are such a money loser, how dare you come back? You made me pay tens of thousands of dollars in medical expenses to Boss Wang. Speaking of. She reached out and pulled Yi Shengsheng with great force. Yi Shengsheng fell backwards unexpectedly. She screamed in fear. Next second, a big hand held her waist, and then she fell into a warm embrace. Yi Shengsheng looked up in shock and was surprised. Uncle, why are you here? Lu Shiyang helped Yi Shengsheng up, his voice a little cold. Didn't you say you would wait for me at home? Yi Shengsheng looked at him. His already cold face now looked like that of a living devil. His eyes were sharp and so cold that it made people feel cold. She lowered her head, feeling guilty, with her little head drooping. Just like a child who has done something wrong. Yi's mother strode forward and reached out to pull Yi Shengsheng, but Lu Xian protected her behind him. You little bitch, how dare you bring a man home? Do you want to die? Mother Yi pointed at her and cursed. The customers in the store heard the noise and ran out. Lu Xian's face darkened. You are looking for death. Uncle, don't be angry. Yi Shengsheng said hurriedly. Mother Yi saw that the man in front of her was not someone who could be trifled with. After thinking for a while, she decided that no one could stop her from teaching her daughter a lesson. Then she looked at Yi Shengsheng. When she thought about Boss Wang asking her to return hundreds of thousands of dollars in betrothal money, she became very angry and pointed at her angrily and yelled at her. I'm telling you, I'm going to take you to Mr. Huang's place in a bit. You should keep Mr. Huang company tonight, or I'll cut off all ties with you, and we won't have a daughter like you anymore in our family. Father Yi, who had been silent all this time, also spoke up. Shengsheng, we have raised you for 20 years. No matter what you have done, you should know how to repay your kindness. You should always help out when the family is in trouble. Dad, Mom, do you know, what are you talking about? Yi Shengsheng's face was pale and her whole body was trembling, but she was also afraid that Lu Xian would do something bad, so she held Lu Xian's hand tightly. They were going to sell her to a man who could be her father. How could they say it as if it was a matter of course? Mother Yi said angrily, you are a jinx. Ever since I brought you home, things have never been going well at home. I asked you to help the family, but you dared to hurt someone and run away. Now you bring a wild man home. If you don't help the family, why do we need you? It would be better if you died outside. Yi Shengsheng's head buzzed and he felt dizzy and almost fell down. Fortunately, Lu Xiang supported her. She looked at her parents in front of her. Their faces were ugly at this moment, as if she had done something terribly wrong. Yi Shengsheng felt distressed. How could she have such parents? They raised her but never treated her as their own child. They either beat or scolded her. Yi Shengsheng said disappointedly, I am indeed not your biological child. So what? We were the ones who raised you. I can't give birth to such a shameless person. Yi's mother said loudly, and then she uttered foul language that was simply unbearable to hear. At this moment, several business cars arrived, and a number of bodyguards got out of the cars. They were full of murderous aura and surrounded the store. Yi's father and mother were so scared that they ran into the shop and closed the door. People around who were watching the fun were pointing and talking. At this moment, I didn't dare to speak, for fear of getting into trouble. Shengsheng, are you okay? Su Zinen's voice came anxiously. Yi Shengsheng turned around and looked at Su Zinen. Zinen, I'm fine, why are you here? I'm worried about you. Lu Xiang glanced coldly at the people around him, then picked up Yi Shengsheng and walked towards the car. Su Zinen followed behind them all the time. If she remembered correctly, this man should be Lu Xiang, the prince of the Lu family. How did he know Shengsheng? He was even holding Shengsheng. Lu Xiang is not young anymore, he is already 30 years old. I have to admit that Su Zinen's train of thought is indeed very different. After Yi Shengsheng sat down, he looked outside the car and called out, Zinen, get in the car quickly. Su Zinen responded, okay. Lu Xiang ignored Su Zinen and kept a cold expression on his face. This made Yi Shengsheng a little scared. Lu Xiang was still very scary when he had a cold face, not to mention that Lu Xiang was angry at the moment. After returning home, Su Zinen's eyes almost popped out along their way. She was curious about the relationship between Lu Xiang and Yi Shengsheng. There was only one word in her mind, canary. Chapter 22, My Best Friend's Misunderstanding. But Shengsheng wouldn't do that. Lu Xiang put Yi Shengsheng on the bed and said softly, you should have a good rest. Have some fruit. Yi Shengsheng nodded. Aunt Li quickly brought the fruit, but she couldn't eat it. She put it down after taking 2 bites. Don't worry, your friend Aunt Li will take care of it. You can get some sleep first. Yi Shengsheng lay on the bed, smelling Lu Xian's scent, and fell asleep in a short while. All the panic and helplessness were gone. Lu Xiang looked at her sleeping face. At the age of 20, she had not yet entered the society. She was so helpless about what happened today, and those harsh words were so desperate. Thinking of this, Lu Xiang became even angrier. He tried hard to protect her, but some people wanted to destroy it. Su Zinen was in the living room, her eyes fixed on the upstairs. She wanted to rush up, but the scene she saw today made her feel a little scared. Besides, she knew something about Lu Xiang, who was known as the living king of hell. But she was afraid that Lu Xiang would do something bad to Yi Shengsheng, and she was extremely anxious. Just when she decided to go upstairs to take a look, Lu Xiang finally came downstairs and saw her with a calm expression. She needs to rest now, you sit down. Su Zinen asked, Mr. Lu, what is your relationship with Shengsheng? Lu Xian's eyes were deep. Su Zinen discovered that Lu Xiang was completely 2 different people in front of Yi Shengsheng and now. The current him was the legendary living devil. Rumor has it that Lu Xiang is cold as ice and has a beautiful face. He is the president of Lu Corporation, and no one around him can successfully ascend to the top. No, there was one, I think it was during college, there was a girl who often appeared beside him. I don't know why, but the girl behind went abroad. Lu Xiang did not give a direct answer. She's been in a bad mood these days, please stay here with her. Even if he didn't say it, Su Zinen would find a way to stay here. She was just about to continue asking the previous question. Lu Xian's cell phone rang, and he got up and went to the study. Su Zinen watched him leave without saying anything else. As soon as Lu Xiang arrived at the study, his expression became even colder. Explain. Boss Lu, the Yi family has published an announcement in the newspaper to disown Madam. Yi Shengsheng woke up at this time. She had a very restless sleep. In her dreams, her mother and father accused her of not helping the family, refusing to accompany Boss Wang, and humiliating her from her roommates. She touched her belly and thought about how Su Zinan had followed her at that time. She hurried downstairs, and when she got downstairs, she saw Su Zinan sitting in the living room playing with her mobile phone. She happily walked over and hugged her. Zinan, I thought you were gone. Su Zinan quickly sat up straight. Shengsheng, why did you wake up so quickly? She looked at her in shock for a moment. You seem to have gained some weight, and there's some flesh on your body. As she said that, she reached out and touched Yi Shengsheng's waist. Yi Shengsheng hid back. What she feared most was being tickled. Zinan, stop messing around, har har har. This sound startled everyone in the villa. Mother Li was cutting vegetables. When she heard the loud noise, she ran out of the kitchen without even putting down the knife. Madam, what's wrong? At the same time, Lu Xiang, who had just come out of the study and was walking downstairs, immediately quickened his pace when he heard the voice. As soon as he saw Yi Shengsheng being pinned down by Su Zinan, his face changed and he quickly pulled Su Zinan up and pushed him to the side. Don't crush her. Su Zinan was frightened by his roar and was stunned for a moment. He was pushed to the ground without any preparation. Lu Xiang nervously helped Yi Shengsheng up. Are you feeling unwell? Yi Shengsheng panted and pulled Lu Xiang's hand, but he didn't have time to take it back. Uncle, I'm fine. Zinan and I were just joking. She was afraid that Lu Xiang would get angry and scare Su Zinan, so she hurried to explain. Despite this, Su Zinan was still frightened by the coldness emanating from Lu Xiang. Su Zinan couldn't help but have a thought in his heart: is Shengsheng really being kept by someone? The coldness on Lu Xiang disappeared the moment Yi Shengsheng held his hand. Are you really okay? Yi Shengsheng shook his head. The child is fine, really. Lu Xiang's face darkened. I didn't ask about the child. I asked about you. Yi Shengsheng quickly said, I'm fine, nothing happened. At this time, Lu Xiang finally let go of his worries, his expression softened, and he looked at Su Zinan. You are the eldest daughter of the Su family in Nancheng? Lu Xiang asked. I am. Su Zinan shrank his neck and thought, is he trying to bankrupt her family? And the next second. Shengsheng's body can't handle this kind of play, be careful next time. Su Zinan was dumbfounded. What happened to Shengsheng? Is she sick? How come she doesn't know? She and Shengsheng went to school together since junior high school, and they became best friends since their first meeting. She only knew that her parents did not treat her as a human being. They made her do a lot of work every day, did not give her any food, and beat her if she did not get her way. But when did she fall ill? Her eyes couldn't help but turn red and she looked at Yi Shengsheng nervously. Shengsheng, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? Yi Shengsheng smiled awkwardly. No. I don't feel uncomfortable. She didn't want to lie to her good friend, but she didn't know how to tell Su Zinan. But to Su Zinan it was another matter. Especially when she saw Yi Shengsheng's unnatural expression, she couldn't help but look at Yi Shengsheng. Then, he glared at Lu Xiang fiercely. Snort. It must be this man who caused me to feel uncomfortable. He must have been too cruel. The sound was so small, yet he could still do that. Being stared at, Lu Xiang simply ignored her. At this time, Mother Li came over. Madam, you are awake, wash your hands and have dinner. Mother Li still had a knife in her hand and seeing that the atmosphere was not right, she wanted to ease it. Yi Shengsheng nodded, looked at Aunt Li, and pointed at the knife in her hand. Aunt Li, you. Mother Li reacted and quickly hid the knife behind her. It's okay, I was just busy and forgot to put it away. Yi Shengsheng suddenly realized. I'm hungry, let's go eat. She pulled up Su Zinan, who was lying on the ground in a daze, and went to the restaurant together. Lu Xiang followed behind them, and suddenly, his cell phone rang. He glanced at them and signaled to Li Mar to keep an eye on them. After Li Mar nodded in understanding, Lu Xiang went and returned to the study. Su Zinan took the opportunity to get close to Yi Shengsheng's ear and said, Shengsheng, are you short of money? I have some. Don't do this again. What will you do in the future? Yi Shengsheng felt guilty and lowered his head, thinking about what to say. Shengsheng, you're not feeling well. Did you do it too hard in bed? How about, let's go to the hospital for a checkup? Chapter 23. Not a biological child. As soon as the words fell, Yi Shengsheng was completely confused and forgot what he was supposed to do. In Su Zinan's opinion, her behavior was exactly what he thought. She was furious and wanted to settle the score with Lu Xiang. So what if I have money? So what if I offended the Lu family? The worst that can happen is that you become poor. Yi Xingxing reacted and saw her angry look, and quickly pulled her hand. Zenon, what do you want to do? Su Zenon looked righteous. I'll go ask him how long it will take before he lets you go. Su Zenon was too strong, and Yi Xingxing couldn't stop him. Zenon, listen to me, the relationship between me and uncle is not what you think. Yi Xingxing explained for a long time, after her repeated assurances and emphasis. Su Zenon reluctantly believed that she was not Lu Xian's mistress. The two sat and chatted for a while, and Yi Xingxing looked at the food on the table. Lu Xiang hadn't come down yet. She blinked and looked at Li Mar. Li Mar smiled. Madam, go and ask the young master to come down for dinner. The young master's stomach is not very good, so he has to eat on time. When Yi Xingxing heard this, he immediately stood up and left. Su Zenon looked distressed when he saw her anxious look. Shengsheng was such a good child, how did she become like this? Yi Xingxing knocked on the study door, but no response. So, she said softly, Uncle, it's time to eat, are you still busy? As soon as Lu Xiang heard Yi Xingxing's voice, his eyes swept across the photo of the severance of relationship on the computer screen, turned off the computer and stood up. The moment he opened the door, his eyes became warm, and he saw Yi Xingxing standing at the door with clear eyes and spiritual spirit. Mother Li has prepared the meal. Let's eat first and then get back to work. Lu Xiang looked at her, aren't you angry when they treat you like that? Yi Xingxing hung his little head. Angry. I've known for a long time that I'm not their biological child, but I don't know what I did wrong to make them hate me so much. A hint of hostility flashed in Lu Xian's eyes. Then he said to Yi Xingxing with a smile. Shengsheng, there are some things in this world that don't make sense or have any reason to them, but you have to remember them. If someone hurts you, you have to learn to resist and even take revenge, understand? Yi Xingxing looked at Lu Xiang, his eyes full of confusion. At home, she has been accustomed to being assigned tasks and has a tolerant personality. Lu Xiang reached out and touched her head. If someone bullies you in the future, just come to me and I will help you beat them up. Yi Xingxing was amused. Why did he feel like he was looking for help in a fight? Would his parents be called if he was at school? It would be great if the uncle was her parent. Yi Xingxing was shocked by the thought in his mind. If Lu Xiang knew what she was thinking, he would probably be at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Let's go eat. Seeing the two of them walking hand in hand, Li Mar couldn't hide her smile. Sure enough, my young mistress and young master are the perfect match in the world. Su Zenon took a look and complained, my Xingxing is only 20 years old, and Lu Xiang is an old man. Mother Li was not angry at all. My young master looks young. Su Zenon took another glance and found that Lu Xiang had a good-looking face. Pooh! I was almost led astray. What's important now is not this. What's important is whether he is serious about Xingxing or just wants to have fun with her. Su Zenon is still worried that her best friends and sisters might be deceived by the sinister Mr. Lu. Dinner went smoothly, except that Su Zenon was worried and couldn't eat. Afterwards, she called home and insisted on staying there. When it was time to go to bed, Lu Xiang realized that he had dug a big hole for himself. He finally managed to sleep in the same bed with his wife. Now I have to sleep in the guest room again. Aunt Li felt sorry for her young master, as he had just slept with the young mistress and now he had to sleep separately from her. Midnight. Yi Xingxing slept very uneasily. The door to the master bedroom was opened. A slender figure walked in and tiptoed towards the bed. With the moonlight outside the window, I looked at Yi Xingxing who was sleeping uneasily on the bed. Lu Xiang sighed and stroked Yi Xingxing's furrowed brows with his fingertips. Sudden. Shengsheng baby. Su Zenon, who was sleeping nearby, muttered something and crossed one leg. Seeing that the leg was about to fall on Yi Xingxing, Lu Xiang was startled and stretched out his hand to block it, pushing the leg back. Su Zenon slept like a pig, turned over and continued to sleep. Lu Xiang frowned. He reached out, picked up Yi Xingxing and walked out. In the guest room, Lu Xiang looked at the little head burrowing into his arms, and his uneasy heart finally settled down. That night, Yi Xingxing slept soundly in Lu Xian's arms, forgetting everything that happened during the day. There is no need to worry about what the Yi family is doing now or what they want. The next morning, Su Zenon was awakened by his cell phone. He fumbled around for a while before finding his phone. I took a confused look and saw the note was Mom. She woke up instantly, recalled what happened yesterday, and hung up the phone. Then he reached to the side. Shengsheng, your mother. Her hand hit nothing and she looked to the side. Hey! Where are the people? Sound. She called out, but no one answered. She immediately got up, washed up, and as soon as she opened the door, she saw Yi Shengsheng coming out of the guest room. The corners of her mouth twitched. Shengsheng, don't tell me you sleepwalked last night. Yi Shengsheng smiled awkwardly. Zenon, I'm so hungry, let's go have breakfast first. As she said that, she took Su Zenon's hand and went downstairs. The two of them ate breakfast while chatting and laughing. Sudden. Yi Shengsheng's phone rang again. She took a look and saw that it was her brother Yi Fugui calling, so she picked up the phone. Yi Shengsheng, if you want to die, just go and die by yourself. Why are you dragging us along? Go and admit your mistake to Boss Wang right now and beg him to take you in. Hearing the familiar voice and insults, Yi Shengsheng's good mood disappeared and she put down the chopsticks in her hand. Listening to the constant cursing coming from the other end of the phone. You also said that you brought me back home. What does your family's affairs have to do with me? Yi Shengsheng's voice was soft and had no power at all. Su Zenon was sitting next to them and heard the insults without turning on the speaker. She snatched the phone away. He sneered, I think I have to take Shengsheng to do an appraisal and announce to the public that she is not the daughter of your Yi family. How can you sell her like a commodity? Chapter 24 Looking for biological parents? Mother Yi glanced at her phone. The person who answered the phone was Yi Shengsheng. No doubt, who are you? What does our family's affairs have to do with you? Stop meddling in other people's business. You don't need to care who I am. Whether I'm a foster mother or a biological mother, I'm still a mother. How can you scold your own child like that? I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to tell that little bitch Yi Shengsheng. Su Zenon would not give the phone to Yi Shengsheng. She was already very sad, and if she heard those words again, she would probably be even sadder. She was filled with rage and was not polite at all to Yi's mother. You don't need to call again. She is loved and cared for. As for you, you are not worthy of being her mother. After saying that, she hung up the phone and blocked everyone in the Yi family. Then, she looked at Yi Shengsheng who was standing aside. Shengsheng, it's okay, she is not your mother. Besides, didn't you say that Lu Xiang treated you very well? She looked at the silent people with their heads down, feeling distressed. Don't worry about them, you still have me. Yi's mother was so angry that Boss Wang sent someone over early in the morning and asked her to hand over the man, otherwise he would lay off Yi's father. There were several ferocious-looking men standing at the door of the store early in the morning. Who would dare to come in to eat? She thought that if she had no money to earn today, it would affect her in the future. She was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. She thought that all this happened because Yi Shengsheng was disobedient, so she called Yi Shengsheng. But before he could vent his anger, he became even more angry again. How's it going? Yi's mother hung up the phone, staring at Yi's father with her eyes fixed. It was you who insisted on bringing her back. I should have strangled her to death when I brought her back. Father Yi frowned. Why are you saying that again? She's grown up so big. You even said in front of so many people yesterday that you brought her back home. How could she possibly listen to us? When Lu Xiang came out of the study and went downstairs, he saw Yi Shengsheng in a bad mood. I also heard Su Zenon's words of comfort, and I knew what was going on without asking. What emerged in Yi Shengsheng's mind was the sarcastic faces of her parents yesterday. She grew up in such a family environment and was in pain and confusion in her heart. Over the years, she has slowly accepted the fact that her parents don't love her. Now that she heard with her own eyes and ears from Yi's mother herself that they were the ones who adopted her, she felt relieved. How can I feel sorry for a child who is not my biological child? Mr. Lu, good morning. Su Zenon glanced at Lu Xiang walking towards the restaurant and greeted him. Good morning. Lu Xiang replied, then signaled her to leave with his eyes. Su Zenon was a smart man and understood it immediately. Where's my cell phone? Shengsheng, I think I left my cell phone in the room. I'll go get it. Then, Su Zenon got up and walked upstairs. Yi Shengsheng. Isn't the phone in her hand? Can you find a better excuse? Yi Shengsheng looked at Lu Xiang with a calm look in his eyes. Morning, uncle. Shengsheng, have you ever thought about finding your biological parents? Lu Xiang asked gently. Yi Xingxing looked confused, nodded, and then shook his head. If her biological parents wanted her, they would not have given birth to her and would have given her away. They don't want me, so why should I look for them? Lu Xiang noticed her emotions and stroked her back gently. Xingxing, maybe they lost you by accident, not because they don't want you anymore. Really? There was a hint of expectation in Yi Xingxing's clear eyes. Really? Lu Xiang raised his hand and touched her head. If you want to find them, just tell me, okay? But this doesn't mean that he won't check. He also wants to know, his little girl is so good, how could her parents bear to lose her? After breakfast, someone from the Su family came and took Su Zinan back home, saying that there was an important matter at home. In fact, it was Lu Xiang who arranged it. After what happened last night and that afternoon, he felt a little scared. Lu Xiang stayed at home with Yi Xingxing. Seeing that her mood had improved a lot, he felt relieved. In the evening, Yi Xingxing was washing. Lu Xiang was looking at a book about pregnant women. He frowned and called Li Mar over. Young master. Aunt Li said with a smile. Ahem. Lu Xiang cleared his throat. Do you have the oil that prevents stretch marks? Oh, how could I forget, the young mistress is for months pregnant, she has to use it, otherwise she will get stretch marks. I have already prepared it. Mother Li was the one who raised Lu Xiang since he was a child, and she was very concerned about everything that mattered to him. After a moment, Mother Li came with the pregnancy oil. Lu Xiang took it in his hand and looked at it. Where should I apply it? On the belly, underarms, thighs and buttocks. Technique. Aunt Li began to teach the famous Master Lu how to apply pregnancy oil to pregnant women. She really didn't expect that the young master she had raised since childhood, who always had a cold face and was not interested in women, would now do all these for a woman. She felt very relieved. Lu Xiang returned to the room with the pregnancy oil, listened to the sound of water in the bathroom, and sat on the sofa in the room waiting for her to come out. Half an hour later, Yi Xingxing came out with wet hair. Uncle, are you done with your work? Lu Xiang responded and naturally picked up the hair dryer to blow her hair. The room was so quiet that only the sound of the hair dryer could be heard. However, a completely different scene emerged in Lu Xian's mind, which was vivid and colorful. Then, Yi Xingxing yawned and was about to fall asleep. Shengsheng, don't go to sleep yet, apply pregnancy oil first and then go to sleep. Yi Xingxing looked at the bottle in his hand in confusion. It was the first time she heard of using this so-called pregnancy oil. What is this thing used for? Just now Lu Xiang said to rub it. Where should he rub it? Yi Xingxing has been working all the time at home. Her cell phone is very slow and she has no time to watch TV or play with her cell phone. She uses the little time she has to study. Please forgive her ignorance, she really doesn't know what it is used for. This is pregnancy oil, used to prevent. Lu Xiang explained patiently. She asked innocently, on your belly? Lu Xiang nodded. Yi Xingxing reached out to take it, then I'll go and wipe it. But his hand hit nothing and froze in mid-air. Moment. An idea crossed her mind. Is the uncle going to help her apply pregnancy oil? This thought scared Yi Xingxing. You don't know where to apply, and there are some places you can't reach. Lu Xian's face was calm. When Yi Xingxing heard this, he asked blankly, Uncle, which parts should be rubbed? I can rub them myself. Lu Xiang asked, do you know how to apply it? Yi Xingxing was stunned. It was just some pregnancy oil. Chapter 25. See all. She shook her head. Lu Xiang chuckled, lie on the bed and I'll apply it for you. Yi Xingxing sat instead of lying down. The two of them had spent the night together, but that was in an unconscious state. Although we sleep in the same bed now, apart from kissing, there is no more intimate behavior between us. Yi Xingxing hesitated. Uncle, can you not put it on? Lu Xian's attitude was very firm. This is good for you. Do you want your belly to be covered with patterns in the future? Yi Xingxing imagined the scene and shook his head quickly. But you can let Aunt Li help me apply it. Yi Xingxing said as she looked up at Lu Xiang. She found that his expression had changed and he seemed unhappy. She immediately didn't dare to say anything more. Lu Xiang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had finally learned the technique from Li Mar, but now he was being despised. His little girl wanted someone else to help her wipe it. She is his, how can he let others touch these private places? He won't allow it. Yi Shengsheng didn't dare to speak anymore. He quickly and obediently lay down on the bed, closed his eyes, and nervously grabbed the sheets with both hands. If Lu Xiang wants to do it himself, then let him do it. After applying it today, she knows how to do it, and next time, she can do it herself. When Lu Xiang saw her fearless look of facing death, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, which was very beautiful. Such a lovely person, lying on the big red bed, the picture is beautiful. Wait a moment. After saying that, he turned and walked towards the bathroom, not knowing what he was going to do. Yi Shengsheng took a peek secretly and saw Lu Xiang walking away. He opened his eyes and stared blankly ahead. Pregnancy is so tiring and troublesome. Then, she saw Lu Xiang coming out with a basin of water and a towel draped over his shoulders. This shape. Why does it look a bit like a waiter in a restaurant? But he is a handsome man, with a smile on his face, which is very charming. Yi Shengsheng was stunned. There is also an element of shock in it. Mr. Lu's image doesn't fit the situation at this moment. Watching him put down what he was holding and pick up something else, busying around, I had an illusion for a moment. She intuitively felt that Lu Xiang would be a good husband who loved his wife very much. Lu Xiang glanced at the person on the bed. He had no idea what she was thinking. She had a silly expression on her face, so cute. Then, Lu Xiang washed his hands, dried them, lifted up her nightgown, poured some pregnancy oil into his palms, and rubbed them with both hands. Using the method taught by Li Mar, he carefully applied pregnancy oil to Yi Shengsheng. Yi Shengsheng didn't have much flesh on her body, she was very thin, and because of the twins, her belly had grown a lot. It was the first time he saw such a scene, and also the first time he saw her growing belly. He didn't dare to breathe heavily. He calmed his mind and put away all distracting thoughts. After a while, his belly was smoothed and he poured pregnancy oil into his palm again. Apply it to her thighs using the same method as before. Yi Shengsheng's face was as red as a cooked shrimp, and she raised her hands to cover her face. She tried hard to ignore the impact of Lu Xiang's hands. But the presence is too strong. She calmed herself down, memorized the technique, and would apply it herself next time. Finally it was done and Yi Shengsheng breathed a sigh of relief. She blushed and asked, "Where else do you want to apply it?" Lu Xiang looked into her eyes, smiling, buttocks, armpits, and breasts. Yi Shengsheng's head buzzed. What? Those two places too? Last night she heard Su Zinan tell her about Lu Xiang, saying that he was an abstinent prince and a godlike figure in the Imperial Capital. She really couldn't connect the person in front of her with the person Su Zinan was talking about. But these two places are absolutely not allowed. Even if you beat her to death, she would never let Lu Xiang help her to wipe it. She would rather have wrinkles and be ugly to death than do that. Especially those two parts, this. Lu Xiang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Shengsheng, we are husband and wife, legally married." Yi Shengsheng shook her head. She didn't want it. "I won't apply it anymore. It's good to let it grow into stretch marks. It's also good as a souvenir." But she doesn't want it. Yi Shengsheng bit her lip, her face felt hot and she was very shy. Yi Shengsheng was startled by the sudden kiss. Slowly, Yi Shengsheng relaxed. The next day, Lu Xiang went to the company very early and had some work piled up that he had to deal with. Yi Shengsheng slept at home until noon. After breakfast, he took out the drawing he brought back from Yi's house and polished and modified it. At lunchtime, she received a WeChat message from Lu Xiang, asking her if she had eaten, what she had eaten, whether it was to her liking, and if there was anything she wanted to eat. Yi Shengsheng answered all of them. After waiting for a long time, there was no WeChat message from Lu Xiang, so she put down her phone and started eating the cake made by Li Mar. As soon as her cell phone rang, she immediately picked it up to check. Next second, the whole person was stunned. The last message on the chat box with Lu Xiang was, "I miss you." Yi Shengsheng came back to his senses, and after hearing this sentence, even his ears turned red, and a sweet smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. At this time, Lu Xiang was sitting in the president's office, processing documents while looking at his mobile phone from time to time. Comprehensive. He really wanted to remind Mr. Lu to concentrate more, as his work efficiency was not good enough. But he didn't dare. After a while, seeing Yi Shengsheng coming back, Lu Xian's face darkened. "You have no conscience. You didn't even say you missed him." Zhu Quan, who was standing by, instantly felt the air get several degrees colder. He then secretly glanced at Mr. Lu's face and was so frightened that he didn't dare to breathe. After a while, the WeChat notification sound on Lu Xian's phone rang again. This time Lu Xiang didn't look at it, but dealt with his work seriously. What is the secretarial office for? They make such a low-level mistake. This plan is redone. Period. Zhu Quan went out to make coffee. He glanced at the people in the secretary's office and said, "Get ready to work overtime." The person in the secretary's office's face instantly fell, and he felt like crying but had no tears. Ever since Mr. Lu brought that girl here, they haven't worked overtime. Why are they suddenly having to work overtime again? Did Mr. Lu get dumped? It shouldn't be like this. All kinds of speculations emerged. It was not until 6 o'clock in the evening, when it was time to get off work, that Li's mother called him and asked him if he wanted to go home for dinner. He said he would check later, and after hanging up the phone, he checked WeChat. When he saw a message, his cold face instantly turned bright, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 26 Fetal Movement. Zhu Quan was very curious about what could make Mr. Lu so moody, so he plucked up his courage, stretched his neck and took a look. "The babies miss you, too." It turned out to be a message from the young mistress. Next second. "That's all for today. You should also go home and get some rest after get off work." As soon as the words fell, Zhu Quan smiled. He thought to himself that if he couldn't handle it in the future, he could just ask the young mistress for help. He had to hold on to this thigh tightly. Lu Xiang picked up his phone and walked out with big strides. In the car, he kept looking at the message, "The babies miss you too." The upturned corners of my mouth could not be suppressed. The babies that Yi Shengsheng mentioned in this message were actually the twins in her belly. Lu Xiang directly included Yi Shengsheng in the group. Yi Shengsheng was holding his cell phone and chatting with Su Zinan. Su Zinan was complaining about Lu Xian's stinginess. After staying for one night, she called her father and asked someone to pick her up and take her home. Yi Shengsheng also told Su Zinan everything that had happened during this period. Su Zinan called over. As soon as Yi Shengsheng answered the call, he heard Su Zinan scream. "Shengsheng baby, do you mean that you and King Lu Yang have obtained the marriage certificate?" There was silence for a moment. "Shengsheng, don't be afraid. Tell me, did King Lu force you to do this?" Hearing Su Zinan's serious tone, Yi Shengsheng laughed. "No, the uncle said he would be responsible for me. He treats me very well. Also, don't call him King Lu." Yi Shengsheng subconsciously protected the landing time. Lu Xiang heard it as soon as he entered the house and chuckled. His little girl is nice to him. 3 o'clock in the morning. Yi Shengsheng was sleeping when he suddenly woke up and sat up from the bed. "Shengsheng, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Lu Xiang immediately became alert when he noticed that the person next to him got up. Looking at her nervously, Yi Shengsheng touched his nose. Gurgle. A sound rang out in the quiet room. She put her hands on her stomach and whispered, "Uncle, I'm hungry." Lu Xiang was stunned for a moment. At this time, the servants were all resting. He tapped her nose and said, "Can I cook noodles for you?" "Uncle, you go to sleep. I can cook by myself. My cooking skills are pretty good," Yi Shengsheng said. "You are in a special situation now. There is a lot of smoke in the kitchen. Don't go in." Lu Xiang interrupted her thoughts directly. Yi Shengsheng said, "Oh," and walked towards the restaurant downstairs with her arms around him. Lu Xiang put her on a chair in the restaurant. I walked into the kitchen and started to boil water, fry eggs and wash vegetables. Yi Shengsheng was curious about what it was like for someone like Lu Xiang to cook by himself. So she got up and quietly walked to the kitchen door, looking at the man who was busy because she was hungry. I have to say, men who can cook are still very handsome. When she noticed that the man was about to turn around, she quickly went back to sit down. Lu Xiang looked back and saw a figure behind him, and a smile appeared on his lips. After a moment, Lu Xiang placed the cooked noodles in front of her. Yi Shengsheng took a bite and his eyes opened wide. Then, his eyes were full of surprise. While eating the noodles, he raised his free hand to Lu Xiang. So delicious. It seems that Lu Xiang should be able to cook. Soon, she was full, but she still had half a bowl left, which she couldn't eat anymore. Lu Xiang was amused when he saw her satisfied look. He took out a piece of paper and gently wiped her mouth. "Uncle, your cooking is delicious. Then I'll make it for you from now on. Why don't you eat it? Lu Xiang said with a smile. I'm full. Yi Shengsheng's clear eyes were full of satisfaction. I just ate, sit down for a while. After saying that, Lu Xiang picked up the bowl of noodles that Yi Shengsheng was eating and ate the rest. Yi Shengsheng thought of something and his face turned red. Uncle, I'll go upstairs first. Yi Shengsheng quickly got up and walked upstairs. Lu Xiang looked at her back, then looked at the dishes in his hands, and realized that his little girl was too shy. For several days in a row, Yi Shengsheng ate when he woke up and slept when he was full. He never even stepped out of the villa. She lay on a lounge chair on the balcony basking in the sun. Now that she no longer had vomiting, she could eat and sleep well. Her life was so comfortable that it was boring. She sighed, always feeling that something was missing. All she did every day was eat and sleep, just like raising pigs. She put her hand on her bulging belly. My two little darlings, are you a boy or a girl? She wondered how they could talk to her when they were still in her belly. Next second, she felt the vibration in her hand, and she lifted her clothes in shock and looked at her belly. Tentatively, hello, babies, I'm mommy. The doctor said that the fetus will move around for months. Sure enough, his belly became bulging twice in a row. She happily picked up her phone and recorded a video while talking to the babies in her belly, and they cooperated and moved. She sent the video to Lu Xiang. Uncle, the babies are moving. In the meeting room of Lu Group, everyone was still taking turns to report on their work. Suddenly, I heard what Lu Xiang, who was the first one, said. The meeting is adjourned. By the time everyone reacted, their president Lu had already left the meeting room. Everyone found it strange. Normally a meeting lasts a whole morning, and it was not even 10:30 yet, so why was the meeting already adjourned? However, when they thought about the previous two situations, they probably understood. But no one dared to say anything, except Lin Jiyuan, who smiled. He straightened his clothes and gave Zhu Quan a meaningful smile. I'm going to pick up girls. Zhu Quan was speechless. He quickly packed up his things and went back to his seat. Mr. Lu's departure meant that he had to get busy. Lu Xiang drove himself directly and rushed home. Shengsheng, are the babies moving? Yi Shengsheng quickly looked up at Lu Xiang. He was walking towards her, with a pair of long legs and dark and deep eyes looking at her. She could feel that he seemed a little nervous now. She pursed her lips and smiled softly. Uncle, why are you back at this time? I saw the video, I'll come back and take you out for dinner. Yi Shengsheng's eyes lit up and he quickly stood up. The two babies are tired and are sleeping now. Then let's go eat first. Lu Xiang said gently. Can I have hot and sour noodles? Chapter 27 Blind Date. Cannot. Yi Shengsheng's face fell instantly, and she thought it would be better to eat at home. But after thinking about it, she decided to go out for dinner. It was a rare occasion that Lu Xiang wanted to take her out for dinner. Lu Xiang took Yi Shengsheng's little hand and walked towards the cloakroom. Wear this. He picked out a Korean-style skirt and handed it to Yi Shengsheng. Then he opened the drawer, took out a pair of small diamond earrings and put them on her. When she went out, I picked out a pair of pink shoes for her, and the whole set looked very nice. Looking at the table full of light dishes, Yi Shengsheng looked up at Lu Xiang. She was no longer afraid of him. The anticipation he had when he left the house was gone in his eyes, and the food on the table looked tasteless. Uncle, I want to eat hot pot. Lu Xiang frowned and asked people to clear away all the food on the table and serve the hot pot. When Yi Shengsheng saw the hot pot soup base, the corners of his mouth twitched. This doesn't look delicious at all. Eating clear soup in hot pot is like boiling vegetables in boiling water. Yi Shengsheng's mood suddenly dropped a lot. Lu Xiang sent a message to the doctor, and after the doctor replied, he immediately asked someone to serve a slightly spicy hot pot base. We also asked someone to prepare slightly spicy hot and sour noodles, crayfish, and milk tea. Yi Shengsheng looked at the things that were being delivered one after another, and his eyes narrowed with smiles. I'm in a very good mood. Lu Xiang was in charge of blanching the vegetables and meat, while Yi Shengsheng was in charge of eating. Looking at her eating like a little hamster, Lu Xiang looked doting. There are too many people today and there are no private rooms, so we can only sit in an inconspicuous corner of the hall, but that's how it is. They still attracted a lot of attention. The man was handsome and the woman was petite and lovely. The man was gentle and considerate, and Yi Xingxing became the object of envy of the women in the restaurant. The woman was petite and beautiful, and Lu Xiang became the envy, jealousy and hatred of the men in the restaurant. Especially when their eyes meet, there are pink bubbles around them, showing their love. But this beautiful moment was interrupted. Time banquet. A delicate female voice sounded, and this call of Brother Shiyang gave Yi Xingxing goosebumps. She put down her chopsticks and rubbed her arms. Are you cold? Lu Xiyang ignored the person who called him and asked gently. Yi Xingxing shook his head and then looked at the woman standing opposite him. She has long wavy hair, wears a tight white collar suit and a hip skirt, has exquisite makeup, and has a curvy figure, looking mature and sexy. She frowned. She didn't know why, but she felt uncomfortable when she saw the woman in front of her. Lu Xiang put the boiled beef into Yi Xingxing's bowl. Eat quickly, it will get cold soon. He simply ignored the woman. Shiyang, what a coincidence, you are eating here too. I also like their hot pot here. After the last blind date, my mother has been saying that she wants to invite you to her home for dinner. The woman's eyes were fixed on Yi Xingxing, who was eating, looking him up and down. Is there something? Lu Xian's face turned frighteningly cold. Yi Xingxing was stunned for a moment. Blind date. She looked up at the woman, then quickly stopped. It seems that she and Lu Xiang are quite compatible, especially in terms of age. Anyone who can go on a blind date with Lu Xiang must come from a good family. Lu Xiang felt Yi Xingxing's emotions. Do we know each other? Lu Xiang glanced at the woman coldly. The woman was stunned. Shiyang, it was Uncle Lu's mother who told my family about our relationship. Who is this? The woman looked at Yi Xingxing, who lowered his head, provocatively. People were guessing her identity, because there was only one girl in the Lu family in the Imperial Capital, and she was from a side branch and was not in the country at all. At that time, the old lady of the Lu family came to their Tang family and said that she had taken a fancy to their young lady Tang Chun and wanted to have her go on a blind date with Lu Xiang. My wife. Lu Xiang said directly. Yi Xingxing and Tang Chun were both stunned. Yi Xingxing didn't expect that Lu Xia would directly acknowledge that she was his wife outside the banquet. After all, her family background was so disgraceful. I don't even know who my parents are, and my adoptive parents are still the same kind of people. As for Tang Chun, it was old Madame Lu who personally came to propose marriage half a year ago, so why is she? He must be looking for someone to get rid of her. She didn't believe that Lu Xiang would fall in love with such a little girl who knew nothing. Shiyang, I didn't stand you up on purpose the last time you asked me out. I had a very important cooperation to discuss. Please don't be angry. As she spoke, she took 2 steps forward and stood next to Yi Xingxing. Hello, little friend. My name is Tang Chun. Yi Xingxing lowered his head and ate with chopsticks in hand, then looked up. Then, a pungent smell came from my nose. Then, she was miserable. The smell made her stomach churn. She vomited and quickly covered her mouth with her hands. Lu Xiang was startled and quickly put down his chopsticks and gently stroked her back. The waiter was not far away and brought a trash can over and placed it next to it. You. Yi Xingxing vomited out everything he had eaten. Shengsheng, what's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Lu Xiang asked nervously. The perfume on her body smells so bad. Yi Xing's voice was filled with tears because of vomiting. She said to Lu Xiang aggrievedly. Lu Xiang glanced at Tang Chun coldly, his eyes like a knife, get lost. When Tang Chun heard what Yi Xingxing said, she was furious. She was using the most famous deodorant, how could it smell bad? This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. When she saw Lu Xian's eyes, she was still a little scared. Shiyang, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. I'll visit my uncle and aunt another day. After saying that, he turned and left, with a vicious expression on his face. Rinse your mouth. Lu Xiang brought the cup of water to her mouth. After rinsing his mouth, Yi Xingxing looked in the direction where Tang Chun left. She said her name was Tang Chun. I believe that the Lu Xiang family must agree with what Mrs. Lu chose. What are you thinking about? I don't know her. The blind date was arranged by my family. I went there for a while and then left. I don't like her. Lu Xiang knew that Yi Xingxing was insecure, so he made things clear directly. Yi Xingxing watched Lu Xiang carefully picking out the fish bones from the fish, and suddenly felt like crying. No one had ever been so attentive to her, thought she was troublesome, and treated her so well. Shengsheng, we are legal couple. If someone dares to covet your husband in the future, you must know how to fight back. Is it really possible? Lu Xiang nodded. I like to see you showing off. Yi Shengsheng couldn't eat any more because of this commotion. Lu Xiang paid the bill and took her to the company. Seeing that she fell asleep during her nap, he got up and left the lounge to attend a meeting. It's just before 4 in the afternoon. The meeting is adjourned. When everyone looked up, the president was nowhere to be seen. Everyone looked at each other, all confused. It was like this in the morning and it was still like this in the afternoon. What is going on? Why did the meeting end? It's over before it even begins?